Last night, we aired the Donald Trump interview. Although the show was mostly Kash Patel, I thought that was actually really interesting. Kash is absolutely fantastic. And we were supposed to get a half an hour with the president, but unfortunately, he was running behind. He's a very busy man, and we respect that they gave us any time at all. It was absolutely tremendous. Now, this interview we did happened just before Donald Trump spoke to the Libertarian National Convention, where the media says that he was booed and the Trump supporters say he was cheered. Well, the truth is it was both. And the Trump campaign knew exactly what was going to happen because they were all talking about it beforehand. But he got booed quite a bit. He got cheered in some circumstances. And in the end, it is Donald Trump who has ended up winning the Libertarian National Convention. Not the nomination. No, that went to Chase Oliver, who is considered to be a leftist, Antifa-supporting open borders candidate. But many of the most prominent libertarians, high-profile individuals, are now all basically saying Trump 2024 because they're not going to vote for, well, a far-left, Antifa-supporting open borders candidate. So in the end, while Donald Trump didn't even file the paperwork to get the nomination for the Libertarian Party, it's looking like there's going to be a bunch of defectors from the Libertarian Party. And some speculation, we'll see, that the LP will get the lowest turnout it's gotten in recent history. You know, they had Gary Johnson 8 years ago, and they got 3 point some odd % of the vote total, which is their best ever. Now, Trump said you can get 3% and be losers or vote for him. It looks like they're going to be voting for him. So we'll talk about that. Plus, Robert De Niro outside the Trump trial getting heckled and accidentally agreeing with the heckler who said that these J6 cops lied under oath and then storming off while screaming at people. And there's a new report out from Politico. Democrats are beyond panic mode. They are freaking out, Politico says, because they don't think Joe Biden can win at this point. He's not even on the ballot in Ohio. So the DNC is going to hold a virtual convention. That's right, a digital convention to nominate Joe Biden and then have their, I don't know, Potemkin convention later on. The whole thing is an absolute mess. So we're going to get into all that before, we'll get into that. But before we do, my friends, head over to castbrew.com. Guess what? Ian's Graphene Dream low acidity coffee blend is now available with a large stock. We got 5,684 bags ready for you guys to buy. And, we're going to do a competition soon. Ian versus Alex Stein, so you can sell more coffee. We'll see if they're interested and they can pull it off. But this is we've been working on this one for like 5-6 months now. Ian's Graphene Dream, castbrew.com. Support the show. We sponsor ourselves, our own coffee. We are working on our coffee shop in Martinsburg, West Virginia. It's going to be a lot of fun. Ian's Coffee now available. Pick it up, but also head over to timcast.com. Click Join Us. Become a member to support our work directly. And you'll get access to our uncensored member call-in show coming up at 10 p.m. tonight. You don't want to miss it. As a member, you can submit questions and then call in and talk to us and our guest. As a member, you will also get access to our Discord server where you can hang out with like-minded individuals. There are pre-shows. There's after shows. It's a lot of fun. Everybody's doing cool stuff. And that's actually where you will submit your questions if you want to call in and talk to us. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with all of your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Gavin Wax.
It's great to be back. I think it's my third or fourth time, and got to figure out how to talk in the mic.
Who are you? What do you do?
Gavin Wax, president of the New York Young Republican Club, author of The Emerging Populist Majority. I have a column at Town Hall, Newsmax, and The Daily Caller, and it's great to be here.
Right on. Phil's hanging out.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Labonte. I am the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I am an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary. How you doing, Hannah Claire?
I'm good. It's fun to be back in the studio. I'm glad Gavin's here tonight. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. Follow all of their work at Timcast News. Hi, Serge.
Hello, Hannah Claire. Ready when you are, Tim.
All right, we'll jump to this story here from the Post-Millennial. Libertarians select gay, Antifa-loving, Trump-hating, vaccine mandate-supporting, open borders enthusiast as their presidential candidate. Oliver, who describes himself as armed and gay, has a history of taking radically left-wing positions. And now, this is the official nominee. But as most of you know, Donald Trump spoke to the Libertarian Convention and called on them to nominate him. Despite the fact that he didn't even file the paperwork to get nominated, I don't think they ever had any real intention of doing so. I wonder what their real goal was with appearing there, I guess. But in the end, let me show you the results. Many people are saying that Donald Trump is the effective winner with the nomination of Chase Oliver, who is pro-Antifa, who is far leftist, they call him a communist. They say he's for open borders. They call him a left communist, or I'm sorry, a left libertarian, which basically is the like libertarian communist, whatever that means, or what is it, libertarian socialist, meaning he agrees with all of these cultural issues, ultimately wants these things, but approaches it from a no government perspective. The corporations can stomp all over you, but not the government, not the government. First, we're going to jump over to, who do we got here? We got Dave Smith, who says, ironically, Chase winning is the best outcome for Trump this weekend, much better than a standing ovation at his speech. We then have Austin Peterson, who posted a picture of Lois Griffin from Family Guy staring at a pill bottle, which reads Trump 2024 and Ron Paul Libertarians over Lois Griffin. It's a great meme. And then we have, what do we have here? Austin Peterson again saying, I'm a Vivek Ramaswamy Republican. And then, of course, Clint Russell. He's been on the show several times, and he ran for the vice presidential slot. That's how they do it for the Libertarians. He said, I just want to make this very clear. Chase Oliver does not represent most Libertarians, and very few of us will be supporting him come November. I, for one, will not be. You know, I tweeted after this, our secret plan to get Clint to vote for Trump is working perfectly. And he said something to the effect of like, damn it, you know. So here we go. And we have this. Top libertarian endorses Trump after party nominates, quote, gay race communist for president. He said in this tweet, yesterday I held up a sign calling Donald Trump supporters socialists. Tonight, the Libertarian Party nominated a gay race communist for president. With those choices, I'm standing with Donald Trump. So I'll just show you a quick little bit about this guy. They show he's got a tweet here saying, don't unify with Trump, supporting Antifa New Hampshire. He's got, what is this one? Is this his supporting Antifa backstop Cop City, calling himself Antifa, saying you don't have to be pro-communist to be Antifa, which he apparently aligns with. He's got ending cash bail.
You don't have to be pro-communist, but you're just helping them.
Yeah, he supports drag queens, story hours for kids, and children going to drag events. He supports transgender medical treatments for children, not surgery though, but just the drugs. He's pro-vaccine mandate. He is he's pro-open borders. Here's a post where he's saying he's open for open borders. So this basically, long story short, he's basically the antithesis of the Ron Paul Libertarians and the Mises Caucus. So basically, the majority of the Libertarian Party, which has controlling voting powers, probably going to vote for Donald Trump, and this could actually siphon votes away from Joe Biden. Showing, I mean, this is your alternative. If you're a progressive, you're not voting for Joe Biden. This guy is also very anti-war, and I can respect a lot of his positions, but he's very much said he will end the genocide in Gaza, in Palestine. So you're likely going to get many progressives voting for him and not Joe Biden, helping Donald Trump, and then Mises Caucus, Ron Paul Libertarians defecting and voting for Donald Trump.
If I understand correctly, he was pro-ACA as well.
Pro Obamacare?
Yeah, Obamacare, yeah.
So currently, a lot of his positions don't align with where he was like a year or two ago. And so everyone's just calling him a flip-flopper. Because I think he claims to oppose it now. But I want to give you guys this. This one's important. Chase Oliver tweeted, give me autonomy and property rights. Someone said, give me convenience or give me death. He says, give me autonomy and property rights, you mean. A business can decide to require workers to be vaccinated or limit customers to those with a vaccine. But no, government shouldn't make those decisions. This will hurt already struggling small businesses. Central planning sucks. Okay, saying that businesses can mandate vaccines is a pro-vaccine mandate position. What we're getting from a lot of these libertarian types, I'm not sure if Hannah Cox is she says she's a rabid capitalist, but she says this is not a pro-vaccine mandate stance. He explicitly says he's against government mandates. His position is that a business can determine who they want on their property. Whether that be a vaccine requirement or other criteria, is a pro-property rights and pro-capitalism stance. It's actually the correct position. Except his positions are also the unabated monopolistic capitalist system, which would allow corporations, and I think this is actually part of his platform, a single monopoly would be unabated by the government. I'm pretty sure that's his position. And that would mean that if there's one or let's say there's 4 insurance companies and the insurance companies all decide anyone who's insured by them has to have mandates, then every business has to have mandates. And then you, the workers, and everyone in society has to have mandates. And the important thing to understand is the vaccine mandates were not government. When the lockdowns and the mandates happen, it was private businesses deciding it's what they wanted. And that is, my friends, the Libertarian Party's pro-vaccine mandate candidate. So anyway, rant over. But now you understand who this guy is and why this is going to be a big boost for Donald Trump and why he has effectively won the Libertarian Party nomination.
I mean, the best part of the speech, Trump's speech at the Libertarian convention to me was when he said, Libertarians, at their own convention, Libertarians, nominate me for president or give me your votes. And it's like the left wing part of that party was like, absolutely, we will give you our votes. I mean, it is surprising to me. And again, I'm more exposed to the Mises Caucus and everything like that they would elect this person. I saw someone saying like, oh, well, you know, our voting process took forever. He was elected really late at night. Some delegates had to go. But it really seems like Donald Trump came out on top and got what he wanted here. I mean, Phil was standing next to me. I couldn't have laughed harder when Trump suddenly said, Libertarians nominate me for president. It seems like they are helping him in their campaign to victory, even if they didn't actually nominate him.
Well, it was a brilliant move because most libertarians are not actually card-carrying members of the Libertarian Party. I mean,
Thank
they've
God.
had a purge over the years of right-leaning, paleo-libertarian, Ron Paul types. They've self-purged them. So really, when President Trump is speaking at their convention, he's addressing, you know, millions of other libertarian-minded people who may not come out and vote. Certainly, if they do come out and vote, maybe they're not traditional Republican or conservative or Democrat voters. So he's winning over far more people than are actually Libertarian Party members. And listen, I can understand this Chase guy. He's going to give the argument, oh, well, you know, a monopoly wouldn't exist without, you know, government involvement. He's going to give these extremely, you know, nuanced arguments and the philosophy of it and everything being equal in this kind of equilibrium world that doesn't actually exist. But that's the problem with these libertarians. They don't live in reality. So they're going to make these arguments, these lofty arguments about government involvement, the role of the state, et cetera, but they're not actually looking at the reality on the ground. They're not actually looking at real people's problems, what's actually happening.
Chase is hung up on like libertarian ideology, right? Like, because the fundamental point that he's making is it's fine if it's not the government because the government has the monopoly on violence. That's libertarianism 101. When libertarianism 101, like this is probably a similar argument to what Dave Smith would make, right? And I agree with Dave Smith on most things, but I don't think that America's ready or is in a libertarian mood nowadays. So maybe that might be his position, but I don't know that he should be focusing on it. I don't think that the libertarians that are going to vote for Donald Trump or that would have voted for like Dave Smith, like they would have stayed had they selected a better candidate. So the fact that people are going to leave the Libertarian Party is because of who the Libertarians selected. They weren't going to have, if Dave Smith had decided to run, there still would probably have been a majority of the left-leaning Libertarians that would have voted for him, though there are some that would have said that he's beyond the pale. But still, the idea that it's a big thing from the Libertarians or for the Libertarians, they're just going to vote for Trump. The right-leaning ones are all going to vote for Trump. So it does end up with Trump being the guy that makes out.
Maybe that was a secret plan all along.
I don't think there was any insight. I don't think it was a secret plan, though.
I'm kidding.
Oh, well, okay.
I'm saying that the idea that, look, if Dave Smith won, he'd pull votes from Trump. He'd pull a lot of the more right-leaning, sound borders, we love America people, but who want to see an alternative to the two-party system, who want to see wars ended and don't believe Trump is the guy. A lot of these libertarians, it's actually really fascinating to me. When I'm talking to these guys at the convention, like, you really trust Donald Trump will do the things he says? And I was like, yes.
He's transactional. He's a transactional politician. And they don't get that. It's like old school politicking. I will give you something in exchange for your vote. And people are like aghast at it. It's like, oh, I'll throw a libertarian on the cabinet. And they're like, oh, I can't believe he'll say that. That's so, crass.
Yeah, Trump said he'd put a libertarian in the cabinet. He said he's going to commute Ross Ulbricht's sentence. Right. And I get these people saying, you really think he'll commute Ross Ulbricht's sentence? And I was like, what's his cost?
Right.
Yeah,
no one cares.
There's no cost. There's zero cost. And the thing is, like, the big thing that is on the American people's mind right now is the economy, and consequently, because of that, immigration is a big contributor to the reasons that they think of the economy. With Chase's position as open borders, he's not making any friends at all. So, I mean, I don't see, and also there's another thing, the LGBT, the pro-LGBT stance, that's really alienating a lot of people. There are a lot of women that look at the LGBT stuff and they say this is totally different than I thought because of all the women being excluded, like the women exclusive places that are no longer exclusively women. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that isn't really being talked about a lot. I think there's a lot of people that feel it, but nobody's really talking about it because they're afraid they're going to offend someone. So I think that it's easy to say the economy, and that is probably some people are using that as in place of the border, but it's hard to talk about the LGBT stuff and say you're against trans women being in women's spaces, you know.
Gallup has, for the single most important issue among voters, as in their latest polling, 27% say immigration. The economy in general nets only 17%. Economic problems are 36%, and non-economic problems are 74%. I don't think those numbers matter. Let's talk about the single most important issue. The economy in general, it ain't it. And that's surprising because normally we say it's the economy, stupid. Immigration, 27%, and government poor leadership, 18%. But let's take a look at that beautiful immigration number. People are wondering why it is there are illegal immigrants in tents under their bridges in their cities. We drove into D.C. for this. It's remarkable what you're seeing. They're wondering why this stuff is happening, why there is this mass influx of people, why private jets are being chartered, and the Libertarian Party says, got an idea? Let's pick the open borders guy. And now he claims he's not for open borders, but then they basically called him out on stage. He says he's for an Ellis Island style approach where people can walk up to a port of entry and say, I'm here for this, and they can rubber stamp him and send him on their way.
Which is so funny because we had that Ellis Island style approach when we didn't have a welfare state, which is usually the sensible libertarian argument against open borders, to say, oh, I would want that, but we need to get rid of welfare and the big government and all this other stuff first. He's not even saying that. He's just saying open the borders, keeping everything as is. It just goes to show it's not a serious political or electoral position. It's just pandering to this sort of, who can be more, philosophically sound in their positions on libertarianism rather than actually provide a platform for people that have libertarian minded goals and are actually looking to effectuate it in some capacity, which he wouldn't be doing. President Trump offered a transactional approach that he would advance some issues that libertarians would hold dear, and some of them are turning away from it. Some of them will embrace it, hopefully.
I think the Mises Caucus, to whatever extent they can, should just become a caucus in the Republican Party at this point.
They were. I mean, the Liberty Caucus with Rand and Ron, I mean, those guys are all Mises guys, through and through.
Right.
Thomas Massey.
Add this whole voting bloc and all of its supporters to those ranks, and then try and influence the GOP with more bolstering of the Liberty Caucus. And
they've had tons of success on that. At the local level, they've elected a lot of these, Ron Paul-style Liberty candidates across the country. I mean, I remember I was a Ron Paul guy, going back to 2014, and I know a lot of people that grew up in that movement. They've moved away from the LP and the Lawbergs and the left-leaning libertarians. That's really what they are. They've become a joke, and they act like because they have their political party that it makes them serious political operators, that they're thinking electorally, they're thinking strategically. They're actually the worst of them all.
No, they do not act like that or
Exactly.
think that at all. They really don't. There's the left-leaning ones. They are there to throw a wrench in the works of government.
I remember some of them always took themselves seriously. There's certainly a faction there that takes themselves a little seriously.
Not the ones that are getting naked on stage.
Well, those guys are another story. But
or the famous
ones that
moment in 2016 where the guy said no to having a driver's license. That video is going viral like crazy.
Yeah. The thing is, there is a thing about libertarians that they always engage in purity contests.
Right.
And it boils down to who is the most anarchist at the end of the day. And you can't work in Washington and be working against Washington.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really hard to get this through to people that the way that you get any kind of legislation, even legislation that abolishes things, you still have to work with people. If you want to cut funding, you have to find people to work with. So just to be like, oh, well, we're going to be anti-government and anti-Washington, as much as I love the idea, the only option is burn it down. The only option is to behave in a way that makes you unfit for government. Because if you're fit for government and you're working to try to get do things with government, then you're just a Cato libertarian and they call you a Republican.
Yeah, it seems like the Libertarian Party had to decide basically on like what its objectives were, and the party itself is always divided, which I find fascinating, right? Like the open borders issues for Libertarian predates Trump. It's been around for a long time. But with this particular election cycle, they had this moment where they could say, are we going to try and get some wins, a foot in the door, and try to really steer and influence conservative policy or just generally policy in America? Or do we believe that we are opposed to the Republican candidate so fundamentally that we don't want to have any kind of allegiance with it? And it seems like they are electing to distance themselves from Trump and therefore further divide the party, which seems like it would impede progress for their aims in the future.
Well, let them all vote Trump. I'm satisfied with it. But let's jump to this breaking news we've got from this morning. So Robert De Niro shows up in New York for a press conference. See, the Biden campaign wanted to make sure everyone realized that this trial in New York has nothing to do with him at all. So he held a press conference outside of a local criminal trial, which has nothing to do with him at all. Sure. So this actually got really, really fascinating as Robert De Niro got tricked, I guess, into saying the J6 cops lied under oath. It's kind of annoying because a car alarm is going off. You've been warned, but I'm going to play the clip for you now.
These guys are the true heroes. They stood and put their lives on the line for these lowlives, for Trump.
They lied under oath.
They lied under oath. Who lied under oath? What are you telling me?
Those two traitors behind me.
Excuse me?
Those two traitors behind you.
They lied under oath?
That's right.
What are you saying?
They're traitors.
They're traitors. I don't know. I don't even know how to deal with you.
I love right away when he just agrees with the guy. He says they lied under oath, and he goes, they lied under oath. Wait, what?
They lied under oath.
They lied under oath.
Like he accepts it right away and then realizes, wait, maybe he's talking about the cops that are with me for this Biden press conference. So Trump, of course, had his surrogates who were there. But this is a local criminal affair. Why is Biden's campaign holding a press conference outside of a local criminal trial?
Internal polling. They're getting desperate. They send in the big guns. I guess De Niro counts as the big guns. I mean,
But Gavin, this is not a political trial.
of course not. But when you're losing, when you're down in every battleground state, you're going to throw whatever you can at the wall and hope it sticks. I mean, what's so funny about De Niro, he's like the quintessential hippie boomer generation. His politics is so surface level. He doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't understand his own talking points. They threw him out there to do the tough guy shtick. He totally melted. He couldn't even handle one heckler. I mean, later you'll probably have the clip. You know, he get kind of quasi chased out of the area.
Oh, he gets chased out.
Yeah, he ran away. I mean,
Yep.
the whole thing was so pathetic. Great optics. I mean, you would think that the Trump team paid De Niro to do this stupid stunt. It was that bad.
Yeah, it seemed really bad. It also is funny to me that this is sort of like the best they could do.
Right. They had no one else on.
They had no one else on hand. There's no other celebrity in New York who wants to come cheer for
There's no
Biden and
celebrity.
condemn. Well, this is what I mean. Like, theoretically, Biden in years past when he has campaigned has had all these celebrity
Right.
endorsements. In New York City, it tends to be where they live, right?
Right.
But we couldn't pull anyone else. This was the best they could do.
Well,
That
he's
seems like
deluded enough to think he knows what he's talking about. Like, he went there, he was just literally reading off a script like a hostage. I mean, you see him there. He couldn't even memorize his own lines. I mean, that's the one thing he's good for, is memorizing lines. Couldn't even memorize them. And again, he had no idea. He couldn't answer basic follow-up questions about the officers behind him and their testimony under oath to Congress.
Since you're
Well,
on the-
when they yelled, they lied under oath, and he's confused. He probably doesn't even watch the news at all.
Correct.
The things he's talking about, he heard from someone else who heard it from someone else.
Correct.
And then he got asked, "Hey, do you want to come out here?" He's like, "Yeah, Trump, that's crazy." And now he's shocked to find that people are heckling him.
Right.
And he says Trump shouldn't be allowing him to do this, telling people to do this, telling these people to come here. And I'm like, to what? Protest?
He thought he was going to be welcomed with open arms. Like, you could definitely tell his ego was expecting to go down to that courthouse and be like, heralded as some kind of hero and this, this great political activist, the civil rights icon, because that's what they all want to do. That's his generation. They all think that they're the next civil rights icon. He made it as an actor. Now he's trying to make it in his next field. He's clearly failing at it.
All of these Hollywood celebrities have abandoned Biden.
Yeah.
Right. I can't remember who was posting about it. It might have been Jack Posobiec, but like The Rock, for instance, says, "No, I'm out." We got another story we'll jump to in a second where it's Dennis Quaid.
Yeah. I
Just
saw that.
calmly says, "No, we're going to vote for Donald Trump." Right. I think the most important thing from this is that in their desperation, they've made it plainly clear that the Biden administration is, in some way, at the bare minimum, involved in what is going on with Trump's trial. Now we've got closing arguments they're currently ongoing. I guess it's going to be delayed into tomorrow or something. I think is that what's happening?
Yeah, they were doing summations all through today. I think they still have to do the judge's instructions, so they won't deliberate until probably tomorrow afternoon.
And basically, it's as you'd expect when the defense is giving their closing arguments, the prosecution keeps objecting and the judge keeps sustaining the objections. Right. And then when the prosecution begins their arguments and the defense objects, the judge keeps what's it called?
Overruling it.
Overruling. There you go. Overruling all of the defense's objections. So yeah, nothing to see here, I guess.
Just an average day in New York court.
Yep.
Gavin, since you're on the ground in New York, can you tell us sort of what the vibe is? Like, how do New Yorkers feel about this trial?
Well, listen, we were just up in the Bronx for President Trump's historic rally there, and I think there's a groundswell of support in some of the least likeliest places in the city and some of these outer borough communities, these working class communities. He's growing support. I mean, even among a more Manhattanite crowd, I mean, they're just not generating the sort of animosity that they did against Trump that you saw in 16 or 17 or 18. I mean, look, down at the court, generally speaking, the Trump supporters outnumber any, anti-Trump supporters. And when there are anti-Trump supporters there, they're usually affiliated with some, Palestinian cause, which they're just as much anti-Biden as they are anti-Trump. So, look, I think there's a groundswell of support building up. I think they locked him up effectively in New York for the last 6 weeks. He's been campaigning, doing stops, the bodega run, the firehouse, meeting with union workers. And people see this. They see it for what it is. They see it as a sham trial. There's no victim. It's not a sexy crime. I mean, if you're going to sell this, it has to be sexy. There's nothing sexy about, these documents and accounting and all this ridiculous stuff. It's just a lame case being prosecuted in an incredibly incompetent way. And I think a lot of New Yorkers are waking up to it. I think he's going to have his best numbers out of New York. That's not to say that he's going to win. That's not to say that he's going to have overwhelming support, but he's definitely moving the needle. And I think it's very possible that he gets a hung jury here. I think there's one or two holdouts and throw this entire thing, out the window, and that'd be the best possible outcome. But he's in a win-win situation because if they do try to throw him in jail, his numbers are going to skyrocket. If he gets a hung jury, his numbers are going to skyrocket. I don't think they're going to get, obviously, a straight acquittal, unfortunately, but everything beyond that still could be spun as a win.
It's interesting because it really does seem to come down to Michael Cohen, and the prosecutors, set him up. They were like, "So you really like Donald Trump?" And he's saying, "Yes, I loved when he praised me, whatever else." And then we turn around and on cross, the defense points out, "Oh, you're actually stealing from him,"
right.
And it's because apparently justification is you felt like you didn't get the bonus you deserved or whatever.
All we learned from this is that President Trump is too nice of a guy. He's too forgiving. He's too nice. He was like taking this, poor dunce under his wings. This Michael Cohen, this guy's a complete fool. He doesn't know what he's talking about or doing.
And greedy, it seems like, right?
Greedy. And President Trump was loyal to him and treated him well, apparently, despite the fact that he had very little to bring to the table. So I think that's probably been the biggest revealing moment of it all. But the whole case is a sham. The judge is so blatantly corrupt, over the top. I mean, again, everything that President Trump has been talking about for months is now being vindicated by the sloppiness and just the overt corruption of this trial. This is the system that he's trying to upend. When he talks about this system, this is it on full display in Lower Manhattan.
And I assume for some New Yorkers, it's frustrating. Like, even if they didn't like Trump, right? Even if they're default Democrats, this is just your tax dollars being wasted.
Right. Well, I think a lot of those default Democrats, or even some of the politically minded Democrats, you're starting to see this on CNN and MSNBC, all the pundits and commentators, they're starting to admit either, directly or indirectly that this is hurting them, that this is backfiring on them massively. It didn't have the outcome that they were hoping. It's actually galvanized support for him. It's won him over new voters. And again, it's just proving him right in all of the accusations that he's been throwing against the system and the Democrat establishment and all our institutions, which are completely rotten to the core.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I think one of the interesting things about this trial is that every single trial that comes up against Trump, the media is initially like, this is the one, they're going to get him. And, right as this one hit summations today, there's media attention turning back to the one in Florida, the mishandling of classified documents.
Right.
And the media is mad because the judge wouldn't grant special...
the gag order.
The gag order, right.
Right.
So it seems like there is this elusive, like, we're going to get him promise to sort of... default Democrats who believe or have been fed this message that, of course, Trump did something wrong and eventually will get caught.
Well, this was the weakest of all the cases. I mean, what they're effectively accusing him of originally was a misdemeanor, and they upped it to a felony by claiming some conspiracy to further the underlying crime. And that underlying crime is not even really a crime. It's never been tried before. It's a novel legal theory. No one's ever been prosecuted under this. We're not exactly sure who the victim is. So they hit him with these 32 Class E felony counts. I mean, the
34.
whole thing... 34. Thank you. It's insane. The whole thing is just a total joke. And I think, no one thought it was going to come down to this. Everyone thought it was going to be the DC cases that were really going to get him. But now they're stuck with this. And again, it's withering away by the day. It seems like a lot of people are now saying hung jury.
Well, the media's narrative is the whole time saying, like even Fareed Zakaria saying they wouldn't have brought this against anybody else, saying that it's looking really bad for the prosecution. And then today they're like, wow, the defense is doing really poorly in their closing arguments. It's not looking good for Trump now. And I'm like, why would any of that matter after everything we heard?
Right.
Unless they're trying to gear people up for the expectation that Trump will lose. Because you can't have this trial and say none of it makes sense, and then all of a sudden Trump goes to jail, because then people say, wow, if it didn't make sense, then this is clearly a sham. But now you've got people coming out saying the evidence is overwhelming, and the defense did a poor job on their closing arguments. That way, when it happens, they've primed the
narrative
audience.
formation. They're just getting the masses ready for whatever's to come, and I'm sure it'll be unprecedented.
Well, here's the story from the Post-Millennial. Trump's Secret Service team meets with local jail officials ahead of NYC trial verdict report. Post-Millennial reports President Donald Trump's Secret Service has reportedly detail met, is that how you say it, with local jail officials ahead of the decision in the New York City trial to prepare if Trump has to go behind bars. The report comes as the judge overseeing the case has ruled that jurors do not have to agree on the crime that Trump committed. Wow.
Great jury
That's
instructions.
amazing.
Incredible.
Good.
According to the report from CBS News, Trump's Secret Service details met with local New York corrections officials in preparation for the possibility, a New York corrections source told the outlet. Being the 45th president of the United States, Trump has the right to Secret Service protection for the rest of his life. Being put behind bars may complicate the situation if that is the case. I hope they just have to clear out the jail. No, there's no way this happens. I mean, even if Trump is convicted, they'll put him on house arrest. They'll say, go stay in your house. You can't leave. And you'll wear an ankle bracelet.
Right.
Secret Service can protect you there. It's cheaper, actually, for Secret Service. And then what does that do for them? Trump can't campaign.
Well, that's technically what would normally happen in these type of white-collar crimes. You get probation. Obviously, if he commits a crime on probation, he goes straight to jail. He's never had a prior conviction. He's older in age. But this judge, I mean, who knows? I mean, he's clearly, has an axe to grind. He wants to throw him into Rikers, which is one of the most violent, disgusting prisons in the country. I mean, there's regularly videos that come out of Rikers with the prisoners, just attacking correction officers, going absolutely on a rampage. I mean, this is not a well-run prison by any means. It's certainly not a prison that's undercrowded. I think it's overcrowded by the latest estimates I remember looking at. So this is a complete dump of a place that they could be sending the former president. And if they do truly send him there, I mean, it's for one reason and one reason only. They're hoping something would physically happen to him while he's there.
I can't understand the logistics of it, right? Like, it's obvious that this would be nearly impossible. I mean, unless Tim's right, they're going to mass clear Rikers, which is bad for New York. How would you have Trump incarcerated? Unless the intention is there to risk him,
right,
or to put him, they'll be like, well, for your own protection, you have to be in solitary confinement.
There's no justification.
They've been trying to empty their prisons for a long time, and now they'll have no choice. Secret Service says that we've got to clear everybody out.
A bunch of new voters right in time for the election, too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
They'll leave Rikers right to the polls.
And it'll really help with the crime rates, the attacks in New York. It'll be a great idea.
Most people that should be in Rikers are walking the streets every day. I mean, that's the joke of this whole thing. And I mean, everything we're talking about here is just a slap in the face to everyday New Yorkers who are dealing with these recurring situations of violent thugs who have rap sheets going back years, who constantly walk on desk appearance tickets every time they get, hit by one of the cops or arrested. They just go through the paperwork, they go through the machine, they're in and out. Meanwhile, you have the entire system trying to lock up a non-violent offender, former president of the United States. It's just absolutely sick.
For basically the media image of being able to say, look, there's a picture of Trump. This is what Georgia was so intense about with the mugshots.
They really thought that this was going to work, though. They really thought that they were going to have. They did, because they wouldn't have started this. Because if they look at how bad things are panning out for them, they really did believe. Because especially when all this stuff started, there was a whole lot of emotion in it too. Everybody thought they were like, I'm going to get Trump, and it all happened. Right after they all started the investigations, right after the end of his term and stuff. They were really serious about it, and now it's looking really, really bad for them. And so I don't see that how they even make this into something that. I don't see the silver lining. How they fix it? It's all bad news.
Well, that's why I think they started early on being like, well, possibly you could go to jail for contempt of court because we told you to stop violating the gag order. Like, I think ultimately this is all about the imaging, and they like, again, with the Georgia mugshots, like there was someone on sort of left media in these campaigns thinking, if we can just get a mugshot of Donald Trump, then the American people will hate that guy.
It's the arrogance.
And it turned out that was the most hilarious thing.
Yeah.
He released merch for it, and people were like, actually, I feel like he's being abused by the system, and if they can abuse a former president who is a billionaire, they can definitely abuse me. And so I think it actually rallies support in his favor. I don't think a perp walk to Rikers Island would make people think Trump was bad.
No, I think he'll win.
Well,
I think he'd win if they send him to Rikers. And again, it's their arrogance, it's their just complete disconnect with the actual political realities on the ground. They think continuously making him a martyr is only going to kill his political future. It's only strengthening it quantitatively with all the polls.
I think now they get the point that it's terrible. I think they're realizing how bad the results
The
are.
problem is that you have this machine of all these incompetent grifters. You got the Fannie Willises of the world. You got the Tish James. They're all trying to be the next hero in the Democrat Party. They're all trying to be the next, big name star. So they're not always thinking.
I think now they're just trying to save their necks.
Now they're trying to shut it down. But in the beginning, it was like every,
Yes.
crazy half-baked prosecutor was trying to come out and be like, I'm going to get him, I'm going to get him, because they're trying to elevate themselves in the party ranks. Now it's falling apart. They're probably trying to put the kibosh on it. But
I would agree with that, definitely.
I have a feeling that Trump may find himself in some kind of incarceration. I imagine the ankle bracelet is their preferred method.
So I mentioned that to a friend of mine who used to work in D.C., and she was talking about, like, she mentioned, oh, well, it would be like Waco, or there would be a situation like Ruby Ridge. And I'm like, it wouldn't be like that.
Wait, how? What?
Yeah, she's like, because I was thinking that it would turn into violence. There would be protests, etc. And she was thinking that it would turn into something that would have like a group of people hold up. But the thing is, it wouldn't turn into. I don't think it would turn into that. And I mentioned
people defending Trump from being incarcerated.
I'm not 100% sure, but the point that I was making is like it'll be more like the Bundys. Right, like it'll be more like a standoff. It'll be people facing down the government more than the government.
Like Secret Service versus the arresting authorities.
You would end up having a lot of people that refuse to go to work. You would have if you have too many protesters that get violent with the police, there would be police that wouldn't go. Not most of them, because I think that January 6th has proven that idea was a fantasy. But there would be people that would say, look, this is wrong, because this is more clear to normies that it is a kind of a hit job on Trump, that it's illegitimate. So I don't think the idea that it would become. There'd be protests, and so I don't think that's far-fetched. I just don't think that it would be some kind of like small thing. It would be a big deal with a lot of significant repercussions,
The
like
line you
really
said
bad.
about the normies, that's the key thing here. That's what they miscalculated. This was red meat for their left-wing base. It was the cat ladies on the Upper West Side who think of President Trump like the next Hitler. Those are the people that they were appeasing with this move, and they turned off all the default Democrats, you use that term, or the normies who are now waking up and are saying, wait, this is wrong. I don't like President Trump maybe, but this is too far. And that's where they totally blew the political calculation.
Why did they blow it? I mean, is it just arrogance that allows them to do this, or
Emotion.
do you think?
I think so. Yeah, emotion, arrogance. I mean, a lot of these people, particularly these blue states or these blue districts like Fannie Willis and Tish James, they never have any political competition. They run their little fiefdoms, whether it's their attorney general office, their governorship, whatever office they tend to hold in these blue monopolistic one-party towns. These Democrat machine politicians, they've never actually had to campaign. They've never actually had to, persuade people of the righteousness of their policies or the success of their policies. They win because of the machine. Particularly in New York, particularly in where Fannie Willis is in Georgia. And because of that, they become out of touch and they lose sight of political realities that still exist on the national level. And they're still operating under an environment where people will react negatively to this. They're not all living in a 90% Democrat district where they win no matter what. They're operating in an area right now, many of these battleground states, where a lot of these races are within the margin of error, and this is pushing people over or bringing new voters to the table that are so disgusted with it.
Something weird's going on because Joe Biden's not on the ballot in Ohio, and something weird's going on. Maybe Occam's razor. There's no grand cabal or conspiracy. There's powerful special interests working behind the scenes that I get, but no big conspiracy. Just they're screwing up royally. Someone didn't file the paperwork. Maybe the administration and the Uniparty has become Swiss cheese infrastructure where people have quit. Nobody cares to support them. I don't know what the reason is that they screwed something up so massively, but it's polarized. It's either they're a bunch of incompetent morons who have lost their support base, are fumbling the ball and filing incorrectly, or they're doing something else to where they don't care that Biden's not on the ballot.
I think Occam's razor. I think you're dealing with a lot of stupid people. I mean, just look at how they govern. Look at their foreign policy disaster. Look at just their media relations. You have that account, the Biden-Harris War Room, posting clips of President Trump from rallies where he's funny, relatable, entertaining, and they think it's an own. I mean, these are the type of people you're dealing with. They're deluded and they're in a bubble. So,
or they don't think it's an own and they've given up.
I mean, Ohio's going Republican no matter what. This would definitely hurt, the popular vote. It would give a win probably to President Trump in the popular vote if Biden wasn't on the ballot. But look, they're scrambling now. Look, I think they've dealt with years of not really being brought to task, mostly from other weak Republicans who just didn't, bring the fight that President Trump has been bringing. And because of that, they're used to dealing with, a different caliber of opposition. Now, they're actually in a real race. I mean, he's an incumbent and he's in a real race where he's down on the aggregate in every major poll, whether battleground polling, national polling, everything. And they're getting caught club-footed because they're really not this, sophisticated political machine that they thought they were. They were just, watching too many episodes of, The West Wing or whatever it was. And they're smoking their own supply.
It does make me wonder if there's a certain level of just incompetence. Maybe you're saying like Swiss cheese in especially the DNC. Like with the Ohio issue, the Ohio law, from what I understand, has been on the books for a long time, which means that anyone 2 years out who was scheduling the DNC's national convention could have, there was no one whose job it was to look at state laws and say, when do we need to have a candidate nominated by? That's ridiculous. How long have they been a political party? A long time, right?
DEI affects everyone.
Right,
The
or
DNC
like you're
too.
saying, it's just a bunch of people who are like, politics are glamorous, politics is social, I watched The West Wing, I want to be a part of this. They don't actually think about anything. They just thought, sometime in August,
Is
right?
this a symptom of all the changes that they've done because they moved their
primary schedule around to make South Carolina.
Yeah, to make South Carolina first.
Primary.
And they changed the date of their convention as well, I believe.
It's always sort of flexible because the party that's not in power, from what I know, goes first.
Oh,
So
okay.
the RNC would be in July this year, which
And
it
this is
is.
state rules. It's state by state. But,
There's
still a Democrat Party in Ohio. There's still a DNC. You're making the right point.
And there's no one whose job there's not like a department of 5 interns who could say hey, you each have to look at whatever 10 states and figure out when they need to have a candidate by, and then we'll pick the date from there. Was it someone's vacation schedule they picked the DNC? I just don't understand, because it's a level of incompetence, which if you were a Democrat in Ohio, you're right, Ohio will probably go red, it'll probably stay that way. But if they want to win any down ticket races, if they want to win state seats in the state Senate or Assembly or whatever.
This impacts everything. It kills
How
Brown.
would you feel as a Democrat being this national party couldn't even figure out what our laws were? They obviously don't care about us. They have written us off.
Here's the story from the Post-Millennial. DNC to hold virtual nomination to make sure Joe Biden can qualify for Ohio ballot. So the Democrats are in shambles. They're freaking out. They're like chickens with their heads cut off. They scheduled their convention where they nominate their candidate after Ohio's deadline. Could not get Biden on the ballot in Ohio. So they're going to have a loose virtual nomination because they're cheaters who break the rules because they're incompetent and don't know what they're doing. And so there you go. Then they're going to have their Potemkin convention in Chicago, I guess. But they're even saying that will be partially virtual. And I think the unofficial reason is because there's going to be mass riots in Chicago.
Yeah.
People don't like Democrats.
No.
In 2016, I went to the RNC. It was hilarious. That's where Jimmy Dore spit on Alex Jones when he was when he crashed the Young Turks event or whatever. And a little protest, not really. I think a little march around the city. No one really cared. The DNC that year, thousands of people protested, stormed the barricades, tried jumping over these 10-foot tall fences they had set up. Massive protests. The far left does not care about Republicans, perhaps because the Republicans don't look like a viable attack vector for them. But the left does think they can garner influence and take over the DNC and gain power. So the DNC is in fear that their own far left extremists will show up and destroy them.
And they've been out of control the last few months. I mean, they have no control over, for example, again, the Palestinian protests that we've been seeing, on the streets of New York and elsewhere. I mean, that's a group that the DNC has very little control over. There's a ton of animosity, and I fully agree with you. This is turning into an internal party struggle more than anything. They see their bigger enemy not as Trump. They see it as Biden and the establishment of the Democrat Party, which is very different from 2016 when there was just this animosity, this fear, this hysteria over President Trump. That just doesn't exist anymore on the radical left and their foot soldiers. They're far more concerned with their internal party dynamic and power structure than they are vis-a-vis President Trump and the RNC.
How much do you get the sense that there are people that are actually, say, aides in DC that share the opinions of the Antifa foot soldiers? Because it's my sense that the people that are elected officials have no idea how infiltrated the Democrat Party is by far leftists who don't believe in the fundamental principles that even the elected Democrats do, like your Manchin Democrats and people like that. Like they believe in the United States, right? Like generally, they're a different kind of Democrat than your squad Democrats. The squad isn't even Democrats. Clearly, they're progressives. They've left liberalism behind. They've left the fundamental principles of the United States. So what's your sense behind that?
I mean, a lot of the staffers I meet, right or left, Republican or Democrat, obviously they're younger. They're usually more politically radical. A lot of the staffers I meet, they may work for a more moderate member of the House, and they're far to the right of their principle. I think the same thing applies on the Democrat side. You see a lot of these younger staffers, far more radical than the elected officials they work for, most of whom are basically just answering to the whim of donors. That applies to both sides. It's a party by the donors for the donors. So you have these elected officials, their staff, they could have their ideals, they could have their vision, whatever it is, a left-wing vision, a right-wing vision. Most of these members, if a donor says something, that's what they do. That's really what drives DC. It's the rent-seeking, it's the special interests, and the staffers, they become jaded, and if they're jaded enough and they're smart enough, they will rise the ranks. It's the idealist. The ones that have their vision for the future, their utopia, those are the ones that fall behind. And I think also to the incompetence question we were talking about earlier, I think a lot of this, it's Occam's razor, because you have these staffers, you have these people with lofty titles, whether at the DNC, the RNC, whatever member they work for of Congress or another elected official, and everyone just sort of thinks, oh, they have that title because they must be very competent. They must be very serious, smart people who are on top of the game. And then the closer, at least personally speaking, the closer you get to these levers of power, and I'm talking about the individuals that are manning those levers, you become more and more just sort of, unimpressed by them. And you're just like, really, these are the people that you thought were really like behind the machine, working things that were actually smart and interesting? They're not.
Well, how we talk about the knowledge transfer problem. It's like Boeing suffering. We've got DEI initiatives, which are causing industries to fail, get woke, go broke. Right now, the concern with these boat crashes, these barges that are slamming into bridges, in one instance, destroying it, as well as Boeing planes failing, is that the people they're hiring don't have the skills or capabilities. It's not just, in my opinion, that they're doing these diversity initiatives and they're getting the lowest common denominator. I think the issue is, if you look at the millennial generation, they don't want to be laborers. They want to be rock stars. They want to be YouTubers. They want to be, and Gen Z is probably not too different. So no one is pursuing this knowledge, but more importantly, it used to be that you learned from your elders. Your dad was a blacksmith, and then you were a kid and you watched your dad blacksmith and you learned how to be a blacksmith, and then eventually you were. Now, dad goes to work and kid goes to school, and what does kid go to school for? I don't know, like feminist dance class. And so who's learning how to drive these boats? Then when the kid graduates with his degree in gender studies and feminist interpretive dance, he goes and looks for a job, and the DNC says, well, we're hiring. And so this decay of capability has spread not just to Boeing, not just to bridges, but to the inner workings of the DNC.
You're describing the whole decline of the West, our society writ large. And I think it goes back 100 years. I mean, there are buildings that we built 100, 200 years ago that we could barely build today. We don't even have the stonemasons or the artisans who could build things. So we've seen that lack of that institutional knowledge, wither away. I think it's applying across, institutions, whether it's corporations, whether it's governments, whether it's political parties. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And again, it's only being, hastened because we've abandoned meritocracy and we're, elevating things like DEI and all these other types of programs that are pushing aside, standards and again the merit-based systems and in favor of race-based quotas and other nonsense. So we were already on a decline before this became so mainstream. Now it's only become on steroids.
Do you think it can be changed? Like, is this decline inevitable? Do we have to accept fate, or is there a way to steer it?
I mean, history repeats itself. I mean, this isn't the first time. You could go back, the Bronze Age collapse. You could look at the Roman Empire collapsing. I mean, tons of societies, empires, nation states have gone through these types of declines, cultural declines, economic declines, spiritual declines. I mean, I think we're checking all those boxes. Can it be fixed? I mean, I don't think without radical change. I think it certainly could be slowed down to a point where society becomes more conscious of it. But it's difficult. I mean, when you're in the midst of a decline, how do you stop it? How do you stop all these forces that are already in motion? I mean, unless you downsize, a nation, you downsize a society, and you start from scratch. That's how history has evolved. It's like a penny stock chart. It just goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down.
I think those that are listening to shows like this and who are probably on the Trump train are more resilient to this decay. And, we believe in meritocracy. So what may happen is the system may be burning down all around us. The systems of power that exist have become unstable. And like a nuclear reactor, which produces beautiful clean energy, when it becomes unstable, could melt down and destroy everything around it. And that's what we're seeing with the Uniparty and the Democrats. That's why they're going after Donald Trump. However, that can only last so long. And so that's why I'm fairly optimistic that even if the worst case scenario happens, in the end, it is the strong individuals who believe in hard work and meritocracy who are going to win. I'd put any amount of money on it any day that if you take someone who believes in equity and someone who believes in meritocracy and you run the simulation 1,000,000 times, it's going to be 99-1. It's going to be almost 99%, almost every single simulation, the meritocratic individual is going to win out in the grand scheme of things.
But that road is a rocky one, returning to equilibrium, returning to, where things should be, ought to be, obviously by our subjective, view of it. I mean, getting back to that place, it's not going to be easy. I do agree with you, if your time horizon's long enough, it eventually will correct itself. But there's going to be a lot of, decline, bloodshed, a whole lot of human suffering before we get to that point. I mean, you saw the same thing, with the rise of the Soviets and other things.
Yeah, if it turns into complete economic destabilization to the point where like the U.S. dollar becomes toilet paper or something like that, the whole world is going to ripple in a massive shockwave.
Our system is beyond its carrying capacity. I mean, we're running on fumes, we're running on fiat, we're running on a whole lot of stuff that's pushing us forward. It's kind of a zombie system in many ways. And look, you could do very well for yourself. You can make a lot of money. You could have a good life while this whole decline is happening around you. Not everyone will be in that boat. Some people are going to, be worse off than others. Some people will be able to survive, the ups and downs of whatever happens economically, et cetera. But there's no easy answers.
Why did you get interested in politics?
Just always was, interested in history, learning about the world, and obviously politics is like a natural derivative of that. You learn about history. Most of it's political. I mean, kings, generals, who's conquering who's what nation is building and growing and or being destroyed. Politics and economics are just the natural springboard from that. So,
But not everyone who's interested in history takes over the New York Young Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, I got more politically active. I had some, things that happened to me, locally that, I just sort of got thrusted into politics, eventually took over the club and I ran with it. You put your name to something, you want to, build it, you want to grow it, you want to expand that. And that happened. But listen, I think there are a lot of people that, I have friends of mine who have similar interests, similar views. We played the same video games growing up and things like that. And they're all interested in politics. They may not do it as actively as I do, but they're following, they're watching, they're seeing a lot of the stories we're seeing, and they're seeing the decline around them. They're feeling that decline. We talk about, younger people, younger staffers, why they have their, visions of the future is because the status quo is untenable. It's not what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. There's a visceral decline in the air. You can feel it. And, people are reacting to it. We've become more politicized as a society. I think 20, 30 years ago, we weren't nearly as politicized as we are now.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I describe the failings of Boeing and other institutions in these United States, I have a sad story about the decline in our military. U.S. will remove Biden's $320 million Gaza pier because it's sinking. Disaster for president's floating aid dock as it's taken from beach for repairs after just 2 weeks. So it ripped apart, became unmoored as they described it in the press, and started floating away. This is the pier that the Biden administration wanted to build in Gaza, which is the invasion, and it failed. So what we were talking about in the previous segment is basically you have these big jets, and people build them, engineers build them. There is a decay in capability and meritocracy at a fundamental level in this country that is affecting everything. It's why the Democrats are probably losing their minds and their system is falling apart. It's why everything seems to be getting crazier. And now and I don't know if it's a causation or correlation with DEI. It may be the causation of DEI, or it could be inverted. I don't know. But now you got the Biden administration sending out the army to build this big pier, and they screwed the whole thing up, and now it's sinking, so they're just taking it apart.
$1 trillion military-industrial complex can't build a pier or dock in Gaza. I mean, it's absolutely pathetic. I mean, all the money, the resources. I mean, it just goes to show that, we're a laughing stock. We've become a laughing stock. We're this declining empire, and you can't get a better visual than that. This dock just drifting away into the Mediterranean.
Wow.
To illustrate it. It's absolutely pathetic.
I mean, I'm so glad we spent $320 million on this instead of, a bridge in America,
right.
Something to fund a state, an educational effort, maybe something to, I don't know, encourage people to take up trade skills and potentially build better docks. Like, it's so ridiculous to me, and it's literally American money being washed away, and it doesn't benefit the American people. It's
absolute. Look at this photograph. It's just absolutely insane what they were building in Gaza. It's a beachhead to drop military gear and equipment.
And Lloyd Austin's like, no, we're not putting boots on the ground.
There's literally, look at the piers connected to the beach of Gaza. There's American boots on the ground, and now the whole thing broke. And oh man.
And who will be held accountable? I mean, who's the guy?
No one.
Yeah, exactly.
No one at all. There is no accountability at all. Well, I'm wondering, why is it that the U.S. military? Because the U.S. military usually achieves the goals that they set out, right? The political side of things is bad, but when you set the military to do stuff, they usually get things done. Historically, they've done some pretty damn incredible things, like the Berlin airlift. They look into that. It's pretty amazing what the military is capable of. I'm not sure who planned this, how they blew it, because they literally have to build a whole city when they invade a country. They build a whole city with all the stuff that you need to live, and this pier shouldn't be beyond the capability. So how this got blown, I don't know. It was a terrible idea in the first place, clearly, but
a lot of graft. I mean, look, even places like Iraq, all these, conflict zones we've been part of, there's tons of, it was a black hole. Money goes in, no results come out. They build a school, it gets blown up. They build it again, it gets blown up. It's, we always hear stories about this, with the contractors and all the people.
Yeah, but that's not how the
off.
military, when it's U.S. military, usually, like I said, they historically, they're good at achieving goals.
Kinetically, they bomb X, kill Y, absolutely.
Yeah,
this kind of stuff, I could see, that the graft and the grifting and the corruption has started to seep in. And again, these are signs of a declining society, lower trust. This is when you start to get this third world style corruption and grifting and graft off the system. Everyone's pocketing and no one's actually doing their job. It's the end stage of a country.
Agreed. It
wow,
is
Grimcast tonight.
Yeah, it is Graftcast. It is the failure to transfer knowledge from one generation to the next. And maybe it was intentional. Maybe it was an attack. Maybe
demoralization.
Yuri Bezmenov.
Yeah,
he was completely correct when they targeted a generation, cut them off from the previous, and now we are unable to operate these machines.
And he said I think it was the 80s when that famous interview was done, he said, you guys are already past these stages. We didn't realize it then. It took a while for us to see the ramifications, but it's been...
You know what's really wild is I saw that commercial for the new iPad. Have you guys seen it? Where everyone got offended because the big gigantic machine destroys everything. Yep. And there was this great meme. It was like the original Apple Macintosh commercial is the woman running in bright colors in 1984 and throwing the sledgehammer, and the theme was bright humanity destroying the monotonous controlled regime. And then
1984, right? It was styled like that.
She's got orange shorts and she throws the sledgehammer. And then it was now 2024, it's totally inverted, and the industrial, cold, monotonous machine destroys all of the vibrant life to create this tablet. But anyway, my point was, when they show the tablet, and it's the woman's hand holding it up, and it's super thin, I thought, you know what's really crazy about that? If you gave that tablet to some like queen in the year 1350, yeah, she'd call it a magic mirror, and it would be like it's got like the face detection activation. So you walk up to it and it just turns on. It's got voice control activation, so you can say, "Tell me this, tell me that," and then if you were to crack it open and look what was inside, what would you find? Runes and glyphs. You would find stones inside with strange carvings and strange lines. And I'm just like, isn't that amazing that if today we fail to transfer knowledge of how these things operate, within a certain amount of time, someone who comes upon a helicopter will just see a giant rock and not even understand what it's supposed to do.
Well, that's what's happened throughout history. We don't even understand, ancient civilizations fully. We think we do. We call this a tomb. We call this, a palace. But we have no idea what they were doing, what they actually were innovating. But I think you're bringing on a point about the institutional knowledge. I think I saw an article that came out that said like 30% of the web, or like a lot of websites over the last 5-10 years, they're gone completely deleted. We didn't even preserve them. It's like the Library of Alexandria in real time. We're just losing knowledge. Maybe it's not the most valuable knowledge, but it's still knowledge nonetheless. It's gone. And then in addition to the knowledge, you were highlighting the difference between these two commercials. Look at, you can look up the Home Alone house, the difference after the renovation. And I think someone made a joke online. It was like the antidepressant version of the house. You go back to the 90s. It was this warm, cozy house on the inside full of children and family. And it really just sort of spoke to the times. And now it's this white, sterile, just brutalist, minimalist, just soulless interior, and it just really shows the transition of our country from where it was in the 90s.
Oh wow!
I think used to have like the red wallpaper. Yeah. I mean, I find it really interesting that our as we have become a more online culture, and we have the rise of sort of the lifestyle influencer, that also we take out any kind of characteristics. The rise of minimalism, meaning just like white, beige, not a lot of decorations, is almost like taking away any kind of personality.
Depth of detail, ornamentation, everything's utilitarian. Why would we put a flourish here? Why would we put a piece of paneling here? It doesn't serve any purpose. Everything should just be white slab.
You don't want anyone to think anything of it. It's like it won't offend anyone. That's what it ultimately came as part of our interior design.
And it's hard to quantify these things, because it's like, kind of everything's run by technocrats.
Wow.
So, what's the value of that wallpaper? How do you quantify how it makes you feel?
We got to zoom in. It's low resolution, but you can see the chairs, the red, the wallpaper, the carpet, and then today it's that.
It's gray and like minimal and nothing. I mean, it's still a beautiful home, but it does lack all personality, right? And I think that is sort of true for so many parts of American culture right now. They're trying so hard not to be offensive or to blend in and be palatable to everyone that there's sort of no defining characteristic.
We got to go back. We got to turn the clock back to the 90s when we used to put colors on the walls and there were families. And
I've actually seen a huge rise in wallpaper. Wallpapering is becoming extremely popular, and I almost think it's a response to this very impersonal, minimalist, beige culture.
We're going to redo the whole IRL studio with that wallpaper.
I've got ideas. There's a lot of really fun wallpaper
the wainscoting and some wallpaper.
Okay, listen. I know that I'm going to be the dissenting voice here. The white looks way better than the wallpaper. I'm sorry.
It's not that I disagree with you. It's just that like this house could be anywhere in the country, right? The wallpaper is in some ways more personal.
No, I disagree with you, Phil. It is the communist block housing-ification of American society.
There's nothing communist looking about that.
The big thing is,
are you kidding, dude?
Yeah, I'm
bro.
100% serious.
Have you driven down the street in like post-Soviet countries?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I've been to Russia a couple times.
And I'm not comparing the level of luxury. I'm comparing the sterilization of it. The brutalist. You don't get anything pretty. You don't get any design. You get a gray cube. Go live in your cube.
Yeah.
So the only thing that has personality at the house are the historic elements, right? The banister, the woodworking, the wainscotings that they left. In one more homeowner, they will take that out and replace it.
That's a very good point.
And this is what I find. I saw this video.
Wainscoting, isn't that the half thing called wainscoting? I mean, that alone right there is something that adds flourish. Just like you're
Right.
saying, you're talking about the
But
band.
that's
stuff,
what
the
she's
wind
one
saying-
more owner will
Right.
take that out. They'll be
This
like,
is a
this is too
progression.
dated. I don't like it.
And if this wasn't a famous house, it probably already would have been gutted. They
Right.
kept some of these elements because that's the resale value.
And I think the other thing, like, I saw this video. I'm sure none of the men in this room saw this, but I saw it on my social media because my algorithm's more feminine than yours. Of this girl, she's in her late 20s, early 30s. She's like, we bought a house, so exciting. It's probably built in the early 2000s. It looks beautiful. And she's like, yeah, we're going to put in luxury LVP flooring, luxury plank vinyl all over the floors. They have beautiful hardwood floors. And everyone in the comments is like, why would you do this? She's like, yeah, it's just, I don't know. The other stuff is easier to maintain. I don't like it. And it's very weird to me, right?
Yeah. Look
But
at
it
this.
is becoming more industrial and basic and everything is the same.
all the home renovation shows, they go into these places. It's like a beautiful 1920s, 1930s home. They got this hardwood floor. It's covered by the 1970s carpet or the vinyl from the early 2000s. They just kill all the character. And now all these shows are pulling back the layers of the onion to
and
bring
it
back
makes
the beauty.
all houses end up looking kind of the same.
Correct.
It's time to do that idea I had a while ago. It's time to execute, and the idea was to get like a small hotel, probably not a hotel, but probably a 4-unit apartment building, and we take each of like the two, like maybe like 4 2-bedroom apartments, and you convert them into eras. So there's a 90s apartment, an 80s, a 70s, a 60s. Maybe we do 5 and do a 50s. And when you go into the 90s one, it looks like a house from the 90s. When you turn the TV on, it's got the UHF and the VHF, and it can play only from a specific period. Like we choose a week in the 90s, we get the actual television archives, and we play them in real time. And then you can go back, at least temporarily, and you can go to the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. You turn the TV on, it's the news in the 60s, and you're watching. Then you can change the channel, and it's real time. I
love it.
Over the weekend. My only concern, and I mean this seriously, because we talked about this a couple of years ago, is how you deal with the suicides.
Oh, for people going to this place?
Dude, there's going to be a guy right now who's a Gen Xer who got married in 1998 or whatever to his high school sweetheart who divorced him 10 years later, and he's going to be crying, and he's going to find this place. He's going to go back, and he's going to open the fridge and see the 1990s Pizza Hut box and the advertisements. He's going to turn the TV on, he's going to start crying, and then we're going to have a problem.
Cost of doing business.
But I got the idea because there was a Blockbuster video that converted a part of their lobby into a one-night-only Airbnb that was the 90s.
Well, you're bringing up nostalgia porn. I mean, that's when you know, I hate to be so like a Debbie Downer, but we have so much nostalgia, particularly on like our generation, millennials, even Zoomers, for a time past. And there's an entire industry, a cottage industry being developed to serve the needs of that nostalgia because people are trying to yearn to go back. You didn't really see this, in these decades you're describing. It's very much a modern phenomenon.
But you drive around, you go to France, you go to Spain, and you look at this old architecture and how amazing it was. I think it was Seamus who was saying the reason for it is because that was media. How you conveyed a great work and a symbol was in the structures you were building that people would see. Now it's something else. It's videos, it's paintings, it's tweets or whatever. So people don't really care anymore. But you look at modern developments. Look, I got to be honest. I rode my bike down the street. I skated today. I got all sweaty. I said, I'm going to go on my bike and just go 30 back and forth and just cool down. And they've got this housing development, and all of the houses are identical.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, if you go to the south side of Chicago, the exact same thing. And I'm sure it's the same in most urban developments. All these identical houses. At the very least, when I was a kid, all the houses were different colors. It's like, my house was like reddish or whatever, and the house was white next to me, and the house to the other side, mine was more like beige orange, and the house to the left was red, and the house to the right was white, and then there was wallpaper, and everyone kind of made it their own space. Now you go and look at the new developments, and they're like, we're putting in a new library, and it's a white cube.
Yep.
With just aluminum and white. It's awful.
And beyond the developments, it's the cities in general. I mean, the architecture, these giant steel, glass structures, they could be anywhere in the world. I mean, the United States, we had beautiful cities not that long ago. You go back 100 years, you look at our cities, it looked like we lost a war. You go to all these major cities, places now you would think of as kind of, dumpy, not exactly a great place to live. We had amazing cities, and we collectively destroyed them after World War II, with the highway system and building, car-centric.
Wait, you think the highway system
I'm getting
destroyed?
gargoyles.
They tons of American cities. They put
Yeah.
the highway right through some
Yep.
of the hearts of these cities. You look at places like Cincinnati, other places. They had entire thriving communities, and the entire highway system, eminent domain, right through the heart of it. They tore down everything else to build parking. They changed the laws, the setback laws. They required, certain regulations in terms of mixed use and all these other things. All of a sudden, all these great cities that we had across the country with their own unique architecture, unique, culture, development, all got destroyed. At the same time, we started to lose our regional accents. A lot of these things that made different parts of the country unique and different, architecture, etc.
So are you anti-highway system?
No, but they did it. They did it in a poor way. They were this post-war energy, end of history.
You remarked about the loss of like of different regional cultures and stuff like that, and that would imply that the highway system is a bad thing, because the reason that they would lose the regional flavor would be because people can move around too easily.
We're putting gargoyles in the building. we got gutters put in, and they're big black plastic tubes that just ride down and spray the water out. No, we will put up gargoyles, and then what happens is the rainwater runs into the gargoyles, and then it comes out the gargoyle's mouth and sprays it away from the building to stop the erosion.
I think these are the things that people do when they love a place, they believe they're going to be a long time, they give it personality. And that was true of the cities, right? Like if you're walking in, the West Village in New York, you're not in the middle of Dallas, Texas.
Correct.
But there are historic parts of Dallas that have, their own development. Dallas comes to mind for me because I had spent time there when it was growing a lot. And there were lots of, like you're talking about, apartment complexes that could be anywhere. They all kind of look the same. I think what you're talking about reminds me of Cumberland, Maryland. I don't know if anyone else has driven through it, but there's a highway that goes through it, and you're literally like looking at these old sort of Victorian style row houses, but you are basically eye to eye with probably someone's bedroom window, because it really looks like they just put the highway down the middle of it. And I think regionalism in America, I think regional culture is incredibly important. I think it's one of the things that we seeded and that began to take away the overarching American culture. And I think, I'm not anti-highway, but I do think ultimately highway was about people who benefited from making money off of it, and the governments that were like, it's just easier for us to put it there than about preserving the communities that they ran through.
Look at Robert Moses. The left is good on this topic. This is one of the few topics where the left, or some voices on the left rather, are a little bit more nuanced and have a better sense of things about preserving the architecture, preserving the history, preserving beautiful cities, making these more communities rather than just areas for, the yuppie transient to live for a few years and then move on to the development with no soul. So these are things that, I think people on the right should talk about, beautifying these cities, making these cities work for people rather than, working for, cars or corporations or whatever they are. And
be centered around community. I mean, I think about this with subdivision developments. A lot of them, some of them in some cities will make requirements that are like every couple miles you have to have a park.
It destroyed these working class, white ethnic communities. There was a lot of articles written about this, that these these neighborhoods in Boston or New York, et cetera, that had really tight, familial cultural bonds. They all got dispersed. They all got suburbanized, sent to the suburbs. And then what was left became, basically a ghetto. And these areas just basically fell apart.
Let's jump to this next story. I want to take the opportunity to actually talk about the Trump interview and take your questions in the super chats if you have any questions in this segment before we go into full super chats. But addressing some of the things that he told us and then hear what you guys have to say. Of course, we'll start with the most important story. Trump calls starstruck podcaster a beauty when he reminds Trump, "You complimented my face." In all seriousness, I can't believe they actually wrote this. It's the silliest thing ever. It was the first 3 seconds and it lasted a second.
It's also incorrect. This article has mistakes in it, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah, this is really funny. They say, what is it, like the wide, where does it mention?
They're saying like the wide-ranging interview will last almost 17 minutes, but it kicked off with Trump causing a noticeable shift in the show's atmosphere as co-host Hannah Claire thank you for getting my double name right. That's nice. Caught a glimpse of him entering and offered a stunned greeting. That's not true at all. We recorded in the morning, several hours apart. I sign off the show pretty regularly, you guys know, by saying, "Bye, Serge," or "Hi, Serge." And when Serge is not in camera view, I had switched it the night before. I said, "Bye, Tim." And as a joke, because I knew you were going to cut the interview in, I was like, "Hi, President Trump." But I just have to clarify for media, if any of your reporters are listening, like, you got this totally wrong. Perhaps
they're different rooms, or it's the same room, but totally different lighting.
Totally hours apart.
Yeah. So Trump was supposed to come in at, we were told 7 o'clock. We'd sit down for half an hour. He was running late. Totally get it. And we were able to get about 17 minutes. But some of the big news that actually came out, we have this. Trump suggests he'll give immunity to police to carry out mass deportations of illegal immigrants. We have no choice. He didn't necessarily tie immunity to mass deportations. He said, we have to restore immunity for police. And he said, we will use local police to carry out the mass deportations. I thought this was one of the most important because Trump has said he's going to engage in the largest mass deportation effort in history. He mentioned, I think it was it Eisenhower?
Yeah,
And-
Operation Wetback.
Yeah. What a crazy name for an operation back in the day. And well, the issue is how do you engage in a large deportation without expansion of the federal government, without either putting a lot of money into federal authorities to carry out these deportations or spending tons of money on vehicles, trains, cars. He said local police will do it. Now, I don't know if that gives us enough information as to how it really goes down. But the idea of local police, that's going to mean the federal government will have to provide funding to all of these local police departments, a mass refunding of the police. Now, of course, a lot of people are saying, most people are saying, great interview. We're glad these questions got asked, talking about the mass deportations, ending the wars, pardoning Assange, things like that. But of course, there are some people saying, why didn't you ask this? Why didn't you push back on that? Because I was told I had 15 minutes to ask my questions. So I'm not going to spend 20 minutes arguing with the president over what he means when he says something. When I asked him how he would carry this out, and he said, oh, we're going to, the police, they got to protect our police officers. And then I said, but how, I asked again, how do you do it? He said, police officers, when I asked about the prosecution of Fauci, he explained, Fauci wasn't that big of a deal and he shut down gain of function research. I said, but will there be accountability? To which he said yes. So, I don't know that. And he said that he would give very serious consideration to pardoning Julian Assange. I got to be honest, when he answered that, I thought it was kind of a wishy-washy, we'll see kind of answer that didn't really matter, but it made the headlines anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's challenging to do an interview with limited time, and you have to kind of hit the most important topics. Like you're saying, if you had spent the whole time being like, well, let's go into extreme detail on this one issue, you wouldn't have gotten the broad range. I liked watching this interview because, again, just to clarify, I was not there. I did not meet Trump. But in the background, you can hear that the convention is going on. Like, you can hear the cheering and booing. And that was,
I do think it's funny that they thought you were sitting there and Trump walked in. You went, hi, Trump.
They think that Trump just wandered into our podcast. Like, that's the most bizarre take I've ever heard. You think Secret Service was just like, okay, podcasters, stay calm. We're going to bring, no. I'm sorry for confusing you guys, I guess. But, I think that there are a lot of questions that Trump is going to face, going through November. I'm sure you've had to clarify some of these things too, Gavin, where we have people who want something really badly, and it is difficult for him to take a firm stance on. Like, I think about his response, again, during his first town hall that CNN hosted, when he said, I'm going to look into what happened with all of the January 6th political prisoners. That's my editorial take. And we're going to review their cases, and as many of them as we can pardon or let go, we are going to do it. But I think it's fair for him to say, I have to look into this thing. If he just told you what you wanted to hear all the time, he'd be, probably not the politician that we need.
Yeah, I've heard from a decent amount of people that his answers are a lot of what we already knew, but a little bit further in some areas.
I feel like the whole entire campaign, both sides, it's there. I don't feel like there's going to be any kind of ground broken. So I feel like any interviews and stuff that you get with, whether it be with Trump or Biden, I think the most news that you're going to get out of him is if Biden has a gaffe. Or Biden has, does something ridiculous. Otherwise, everyone kind of knows that Trump is going to be able to get through whatever kind of interviews you have. He's going to be Trumpy. He's going to be himself. He's going to do the same things that he did for the 4 years that he was the president. And Biden, if he does any interviews, which I would like to see more clearly, because I think that only raises the chances of him making a mistake. But I think that would be the only news that's really kind of in the cards, or at least that's what I think that people kind of have resided themselves to.
I'm just happy that we've normalized mass deportations. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, having a major presidential candidate saying he wants to initiate mass deportations, utilizing, local police officers, that would be a radical position. The Overton window has shifted so far in such a short period of time that now we're here talking about, like, well, is he really going to just use local police to deport them all, or is he going to build out a federal bureaucracy? Okay, I mean, I like that that's the discussion. I like that that's the point of contention, is how he's going to do the mass deportation, or rather than are we going to have it or not. So, silver linings, taking these things with a grain of salt.
When are we getting Biden on the podcast? Tim?
Yeah, right. We had RFK Jr. and Donald Trump. Tremendous respect to RFK Jr. for sitting
Chase,
down
you're going
for
to get
2
Chase?
hours.
What's his name? The Libertarian guy?
Chase Oliver. I think that'd be a fantastic episode, actually. But it really depends because, I was thinking about this. You get this guy who's basically like an Antifa leftist, and the Libertarian Party is in it's been in civil war with itself for years, and a lot of the most prominent high-profile individuals are rejecting Chase Oliver outright. So I don't know if I view him as a legitimate a voice of the Libertarian Party. And so the question is, would I have him on in any other circumstance? Well, he's not a particularly prominent individual. I don't know what he necessarily adds. Now that he is the nominee, there is the reasonable, well, sure, why wouldn't we have him on the show? What we try to do with guests on this show is it's not about having the biggest follower count in the world. It's about being an active political commentator. And so we get a lot of people who are like, hey, I know somebody who's like a research scientist in, metals or whatever. And it's like, can they comment on the news? Because we are a topical news commentary show. And it's like, no. And it's like, well, then maybe the Culture War is better because that's why we set that show up in the first place. So Culture War Friday mornings. If we were going to have him on, it probably would make more sense on the Culture War now that he is a Libertarian nominee. But I also, I feel, man, with the Libertarian Party, they really just took a dump on the floor. I don't know how else to put it.
I would like to see us get Jeremy Kaufman much more than I would like to see.
Well, he's been on the show before.
Jeremy Kaufman?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we could. How about we have him and Chase on the Culture War?
That would be hilarious. That would be hilarious. I'll reach out to Lisa and try and set that up myself. That'd be great.
The other big thing that came out of the Trump interview, of course, is the prosecuting Fauci and many other people. I want to clarify something too, because being strapped for time in this interview, you don't really get a lot of time to break things down. When I said one of the Libertarian presidential nominees said he wants to see Fauci, the heads of Moderna, Pfizer, Biden, and you locked up for what happened during COVID, I don't agree with them, but there is a big sentiment. Elon Musk tweeted, prosecute Fauci. Fauci lied to Congress about gain-of-function research that was going on. Trump then jumps in. I'll clarify. I don't agree that Donald Trump himself should be prosecuted. And for this case in particular, I'm not so sure Biden either. But Fauci lied to Congress. He lied to Rand Paul. It was the most ridiculous testimony I've ever heard, where he's like, were you funding gain-of-function research? No. We were just funding research into viruses that made them more, virulent and enhanced their abilities. And then Rand's like, which is the little definition of gain-of-function research? No. And so this guy needs to be prosecuted. Trump's response was, he jumps in, he says, I stopped Fauci, or Fauci didn't really wasn't a big player in my administration, and I'm the one who shut down gain-of-function. I said, will there be accountability for the lying to Congress when you get to appoint your new AG? And Trump said, yeah, we'll take a look at statute of limitations because, the statute of limitations are quite long. I feel like the challenge with this is if someone were to ask me, like if I was running for office and someone said, actually, I'll put it this way. If you're going to engage in a legal battle, you never publicly announce it before you do. This is the challenge that Trump faces because a lot of people are saying, I want Trump to outright say, we will prosecute these people, giving them advance warning to start destroying documents and getting their lawyers, and you can't do it. So everybody wants to know that he will, but how does he answer that without sending a signal? You know what I mean?
And it can't seem political, obviously. But listen, I think the sentiment is the right place. We need to bring some reciprocity back to the system. We're talking about this case in New York. We're talking about all these federal cases, this political lawfare. This is not going to stop until the left recognizes that it could happen to them. And up until now, they've operated with impunity and they've thought, we don't have to deal with these types of things. The right are too weak. They're too, cowardly to dare, hold us accountable for our many, transgressions and crimes, or at least be, reciprocal in how we, dole out the lawfare. I think, I agree with you. Don't talk specifics. Don't give them an ability to, wipe out their computers and all the rest. But I think we're never going to advance as a country until we return to that reciprocity, because right now it's open political warfare, but it's only coming from one side to the other rather than back and forth. it'll stop overnight the second they realize that they can be held to account.
Well, it's no secret that I believe we are in some kind of civil conflict.
Low intensity.
Or no intensity, just political manipulation, information, power struggles, and things like that. Maybe it'll never reach the point of heat. Maybe it'll always be a cold civil war. But, I mean, look, they're trying to put the front runner for the presidency in prison.
Right.
This is not a normal circumstance. They are not. We are not having elections. You know, look, with the Libertarian Party, something fascinating happened where Michael Rechtenwald, who's been on the show several times, was the front runner. He actually won the first several rounds of voting for the nomination. And then a guy who was in third place pledged to run as the vice presidential candidate for Chase Oliver, who was in second place, if they voted for Chase Oliver, which put them above Michael Rechtenwald.
You know, that guy's a former police officer.
Yeah.
I can't. That
Former cop, bureaucrat, all that stuff.
I don't understand.
And so he told the Libertarian Party, I will be his VP, everyone back Chase instead of Michael. Michael walks away from the, there's a video of him saying, he's like, I can't believe it. I didn't do any backroom deals. I didn't do any politicking. I just said, here's who I am. Here's what I'm running for. Pick me. And then they cut a deal with each other to shut him out. The second and third place winning against the guy in first place. Now imagine that at the national level. The Democrats are not having elections. Donald Trump in 2020 said, I'm the best, vote for me, here's why, thinking that wins you elections. And the Democrats went, manipulate the system in any way so that we have more pieces of paper with names on it. That's where we're currently at. It is not a functioning, legitimate system. Or I should say, I don't even know how you describe that. We are no longer a system where we have a conversation about the issues and decide how to run things. It is one faction, the Democrats, smashing everything with sledgehammers, refusing to let go of any power that they have. And then you have Donald Trump and the right being like, well, while you're smashing things, can I please argue why we are right and you should not smash them?
The Democrats stopped making arguments at least 10 years ago, right? They had basically given up probably when Mitt Romney ran against Obama. But then when Donald Trump came, then they were just like, okay, there's no more arguments. It's all just racist, bigot. That's all, whatever it is. Yeah, there's no arguments being made from the left anymore at all.
It's post-persuasion. It's tribal. You have these elections, it doesn't matter what your views are, who you are. You have a certain segment of the population is always going to vote for you, and you want to continue to grow that segment. And look, I respect them. They are ruthless political operators. They understand that power is an art. It's a science. They're trying to master it in many ways, and they're trying to perfect it, and they're doing that. They're being ruthless and cunning, Machiavellian, and, they're bringing guns to a gunfight. We're bringing, nothing to these fights, frankly. So
lawyers.
We're bringing, sometimes lawyers, even that. I think we rarely bring that. So look, they're going to continue to win if they're operating like this, and that's just the calculus. I mean, they get it. They're playing for keeps, and we're not.
I don't know that they're going to win, to be honest, because the breaking point is different. The Democrats have no breaking point. Democrats don't care. The Democrat voters are default liberals who aren't really paying attention, who have no idea what's going on. Those that are starting to wake up because of, say, I don't know, the border invasion, you've got these people in New York and in Chicago who are like, why is my community center overrun with illegal immigrants? What's happening? They're being shocked into the system. Now they're going to vote for Trump. Yeah. The Democrats don't have a breaking point. If they keep stealing power, it is the right that has the breaking point where they just say, okay, that's it. Convention of States, we're shutting this thing down.
It's a good point. I think you're touching on, the other element here is that they're overplaying their hand. They could get away with this, but they've accelerated what they've been trying to do a lot faster because of the rise of President Trump. They're responding emotionally. They're responding arrogantly. They're, just overplaying things. They're pushing the envelope too far.
They don't have anything else.
They have nothing else, so they're doubling down, they're tripling down. And, had they been able to operate in a world, frankly, without President Trump, I think it would have been a little bit different. Had Hillary won, had they continued to do this more slow march through the institutions, more of their Fabian-style takeovers of things, they could have got to a point where we woke up one day and they already had solidified everything. But unfortunately, there's been some, rough currents along the way, and they're recalibrating, and they're not doing such a good job at it.
Indeed. But I think that ultimately what happens when, we were talking earlier about meritocracy and what happens in the system. The right is the more meritocratic side. They're having kids, they're teaching their kids. The left is not. if the left tries to steal power, and let's say November. I mean, look, we're what 5 months and a week away from what is going to be nuts. If the Democrats end up winning, the right may reach its breaking point. Now, I don't know what that means. It just means that maybe there's it's a no confidence system where the Democrats just can't keep stealing power and smashing things with sledgehammers. My fear is you end up with people on the right in their small towns just saying, okay, that's it. We're basically divesting. We hereby secede and we don't need your authority because you have none, you're illegitimate. If the right when Antifa goes Antifa and they go around smashing things, nothing really happens because they're aimless and they're stupid. But when the meritocratic side decides in the same way we have no confidence in the system, they start building systems, they start taking over, and they have training, strategy, logistics. So if in the event the Democrats steal power in some way, arresting Trump or otherwise, you may just see the right organize in a way their breaking point is, okay, now we organize at the local level and we sever ourselves from the other government.
South Africa, they're doing that there with the Afrikaners in Oranje. They're just separating, building their own state, within a state. I mean, that's kind of the sort of the decline we're looking at. It's not going to be this explosive Spanish Civil War style event. It's just going to be this decline to the point that we're all basically going our separate ways.
The legitimacy of the federal government, we can't do, I don't think we can do things the way that other countries can. Like, the United States is unique in the world. There's no question about that. So, and because of the fact that, the phrase is when the United States sneezes, the rest of the world gets a cold. The U.S. having significant problems, like political problems about the actual like cracks in the foundation, however you want to phrase it. If there's actual question about the legitimacy of the federal government, that's gonna have consequences globally. That's going to mean that China and Russia are going to notice, and they are going to do things that are going to put their countries into better positions globally, and that will put them into conflict with the United States. Yeah. So the idea that this is a only in the U.S. thing, this election that's coming up, if the front runner's in jail and people are still going to vote for him, the rest of the world, like what they do is it's totally up in the air. We don't have a real solid knowledge of how things work in China or in Russia. And I think that the Ukraine invasion was clear, made that pretty clear. So I don't think that I just think that the possibilities for things to go bad are numerous, especially when you see the stuff they're talking about putting Trump in jail today and stuff.
Yeah, I think the fact that the rest of the world watches our news and is kind of waiting to see what happens, because a lot of countries had elections this year. Russia has elections, India has elections this year, but because America has such military and economic influence over the world, I do think that certain countries are kind of waiting till the day after our election to decide what they're going to do next. Like I don't know that you'll see necessarily an escalation of China and Taiwan until China knows who it's going to have to deal with from America. I don't know that you could broker any kind of deal right now with Russia to stop the Ukraine war until you see the results of the election, because there's no incentive, right? They know they just have to wait out the next couple of months and then decide how they're going to proceed and deal with the U.S. for the next 4 years after that.
Yeah, nothing's in isolate. Everything is acting, globally across the world. And listen, we've squandered our Pax Americana. We squandered our unipolarity. We emerged out of the Cold War in the 90s, with this very strong, unified country. We had these national bonds, a national consensus. We were still strong industrial power. We had a semblance of, of patriotism, and we squandered it. We deindustrialized. We opened the borders. We got involved in forever wars. And now we're dealing with a multipolar world order that we don't want to accept or recognize. And we're dealing with situations where they're completely out of our control. We talk about the incompetence at home. We talk about the incompetence in D.C. That was all manifested first and foremost, not domestically, but actually internationally. You saw our incompetence just, laid bare with everyone just being able to, take advantage of us globally. That's the sort of stuff that President Trump was talking about. But just look what's happening with Russia, Ukraine. Look what's happening between China and Taiwan and all these other different conflicts across the world. I mean, no one takes us seriously anymore. They see, that Biden is the emperor with no clothes. They see that we're a declining power. And while they're still going to take, our elections and domestic affairs into consideration, that becomes waned with every passing day. Every day that goes by, we're less of a factor, and they're operating on their own. They're elevating their own currencies. They're doing their own thing, and we're just falling further and further behind. I
do think it's funny that we are saying we're a multipolar world now, as if to imply a unipolar world where we're on top is the norm, where we should be. It's kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, historically, it's not. I mean, there have been tons of most of human history is multipolar. We've had periods of time, particularly in the modern era, where we've seen some unipolarity. We inherited, I guess, de facto from the British, and it was a very short period of time that we actually had a unipolar world order. It was bipolar between, the communist countries and the West for a while, the third world. Now it's developed into a new multipolar world order again.
Before this, it was always multipolar.
Correct.
I mean, even with the Roman Empire, that's just central on the Roman Empire, and then you have to look at the East Asia and
they emerged. They slowly consolidated across the Mediterranean. They became sort of in their area.
But my point is that wasn't even a world power.
Correct.
It was always just regional, and there were various powers throughout the world to varying degrees, not so much in conflict. And then now we have solidification, essentially.
And multipolarity is a check on these sort of excesses of a single unipolar or global elite. I mean, because we talk about unipolarity, it's generally the collective West. It's, not just the United States, it's, Western Europe, et cetera. And that sort of collective elite are really out of touch. You have multipolarity, there's competition between states. This is a good thing. It forces them to, rein in their excesses of some of these of ideological in nature, or excesses otherwise. So I think it's a good thing. It's beneficial to the world.
All right, we're going to go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, smash that like button, because one like equals one Let's Go Brandon. That works better than just telling people to smash the like button, because now we're saying Let's Go Brandon. And head over to timcast.com, click Join Us to become a member, and watch the members-only call-in show, which is coming up in about half an hour at 10 p.m. That's where you as members call in to talk to us and our guests. It's a lot of fun, and I recommend you become a member to support the show. That is how we fund the show. This show is only possible because of you as members. If at any point we no longer had members, there'd be no show. We would have something would exist, but it wouldn't be this. And so if you want to see the show continuing, just become a member at timcast.com by clicking Join Us. And now we'll read your Super Chats. Clint Torres, first in line with Howdy People. Howdy, Clint. Token Black Guy says, Howdy People, howdy, Clint. Tim, congrats on the Trump interview. If Phil's in the house, can I get a let's go?
Let's go!
Sea Cowboy says, Tim, your Gadsden flag idea would be ironic with a bunch of tire tread marks on it from leftist protesters. I said what we should do, because of the rainbow flag murals, is just like, I'll pay for a Gadsden flag mural in the street somewhere, and then, they will tread all over it.
I think it's good when people leave tire marks on
the road? On the road,
yeah.
I mean, it's the road. It's kind of, now, you saw the video, right? This guy was doing donuts and spinning around in the middle of the road.
Good for him.
They're going to they're charging him with a felony for it, so no, he shouldn't be doing that. And spinning around and doing donuts in the middle of the street could get people killed, so probably not a good idea. And I also take the more libertarian approach that if a community wants to pay for paint in the street, they're allowed to. But the idea that they're going to charge someone with a felony for driving on the road is absolutely insane.
It's a thought crime, is what they're accusing him of.
The doing the donuts is reckless endangerment. That I can agree with. Felony mischief or whatever. It's like, dude, there's a guy doing donuts at 2 a.m. Calm down.
You see like takeovers where people have taken over entire intersections, and there are multiple cars spinning. The police are not pulling anyone over. They're like, that stuff is just happening. And people getting smacked, by cars while they're doing those donuts, and they don't care.
They do, and they go and they actually arrested some of these guys.
The police,
the takedowns. Yeah, there was a video where a guy got smacked by a car, and then like a week later, they found 3 dudes and arrested them all.
Well, that's good. You don't see the results very frequently, and they're definitely not. They're definitely not.
My thing is, look, if a community wants to paint something in the street, don't destroy it. If they vote to do it, it's done through the proper channels and everything like that. In New York, the governor stole money to print Black Lives Matter in front of Trump's hotel, and that was criminal and illegal, and then had police on it. But if we're going to be any kind of functioning government that believes in the founding principles, then we solve all of these problems through what the founding fathers hoped we would solve them with, and it's sending strongly worded letters. And people don't understand this. This is what the founding fathers did. They think the founding fathers like just got up and you know this meme where they're like the founding fathers be stacking bodies by now. No, they wouldn't. They literally would not. It was a year into the war before they actually wrote the Declaration of Independence. The founding fathers were brilliant, reasonable people who said, we do not want war. Stop attacking us. And they kept sending petition after petition to the Crown. And the Crown said, screw off, until finally a year and a month into it, they were like, guys, I think they mean to bring war to us. So
they were far more conservative than the French revolutionaries. People forget that.
Oh, yeah. And the French revolutionaries were nuts.
Yeah, completely.
The founding fathers, it was Lexington and Concord was a year and a month before the Declaration of Independence. It was skirmishes popping up of rebellion against the regulars and the Crown continuing to say, screw you, have no rights, until finally a year later, the founding fathers were like, all right, well, we're independent then, I guess. You won't negotiate. You keep attacking us. And so people seem to think that the founding fathers were like, the king's kind of a dick. Let's go to war with him. No. They were very reasonable, very smart. And that's why they made the best nation ever. And we got to function that way. That means if St. Petersburg wants to have a rainbow, they can have a rainbow. And you shouldn't intentionally try and destroy people's stuff. Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's blasphemy laws. I mean, that's really what this is. That's why they're treating it differently. I agree with you. Obviously, if there's reckless endangerment on the road and things like that, but these things are being elevated beyond what they should be at a statutory level because it's it's a secret blasphemy law that's not on the books, but that's how they're going to treat it.
Well, the escalation of these crimes, like in New York when the dude burned the pride flag and they charged him with a hate crime over it.
Well, there were these drunk frat guys that were walking, in the West Village, and they just threw a few of these little plastic, pride flags on the floor, and they tried to charge them with felonies. I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
All right, what do we got? Lexington Daniels says, I've been registered LP since 92. The decline over the past handful of nominees has been a joke. Chase is the punchline, and I'm done. I re-registered Republican last night. Wow. Tons of tweets from tons of people, whether they're admitting it or not, switching to the Republican Party and voting for Donald Trump. Some people have been explicit and just said outright, then Trump it is, like Jeremy Kauffman said that he's going to be voting for Trump after just making fun of Trump supporters. It's funny how a lot of people are like, well, okay, Trump it is, I guess. Like with Ron DeSantis' supporters saying, I will never do it. And then they see Biden, they're like, I will vote Trump.
If you at all care about things like family values, then you have to vote hilariously for Donald Trump because the other two are the trans, the kids candidates. It's like LGBT education in 5th grade and et cetera, et cetera. Like, so if you have any interest in seeing any kind of attention being paid to family values, you have to vote for Donald Trump. The idea that we have so much, or the fact that we have so much focus on LGBT issues when we have so many actual family problems, LGBT issues are a small minority that don't actually have an effect on most people's lives.
Right.
Actually, things like single parent homes, those things have a lot of effect on society.
Yeah, marriage rates, single family homes, participation of fatherhoods and fathers in raising their children. It is kind of something that I think everyone needs to look in the mirror and realize, which is the more we allow the LGBTQ issues to dominate our social political sphere, the more we did a disservice to ourselves and our neighbors. And I think you're right. When for me, I would go back to the open borders thing, right? Like I will never vote for an open borders candidate. There's no way you convince me. There's no compromise there. So for the Libertarians, there's no way to say like, we'll fall in line now because they are so divided on some of these key issues. And I understand being dedicated to the philosophy, and I think it's important to have conversations about sort of what you were talking about this weekend, like what small L libertarianism means and how it can influence how you set policy. But if you want to see less illegal immigration, you cannot pick an open borders candidate. If you want to see family values become the main focus of our political conversation, you cannot pick someone who is focusing their attention on LGBTQ issues.
Yeah. Like if someone came out and said, I'm going to lower your tax rate by 10, but it's still going to be 15, are you going to be against that because you're philosophically opposed to the income tax? No, you want to move things in the right direction on the margin. So if you're going to engage...
Not libertarians.
Yeah, not libertarians.
Well, some
not enough
big
of
L.
them. Not enough of them.
Big L libertarians in the party. There's a lot
big
of...
L, big loser, you mean?
Big L, big
It's funny
loser.
how that works out.
Yeah, but there's a lot of libertarians who are sensible, who understand that they're going to engage in the political process, not because they're expecting, some, stateless society overnight, because they recognize that they can move things in the right direction. They can get their taxes lowered. They can move things, in regards to regulations, whatever it may be. They're willing to engage in that process. The LP, I don't know exactly what they're trying to do. Probably none of that. But if they want to be engaged, if they do care, they should certainly vote for Trump, because that's the only thing they're going to get.
Well, the Mises Caucus people they'll defect, but Democrats have meetings where they say, the left-leaning progressive urban voter, how do we get as many of them as possible? How do we get the undecided middle-of-the-road people? Well, we're going to have to advocate for these policies. Done. The Republicans say, the undecided middle of the road, we got the rural conservatives. How do we get the middle of the road undecideds? Well, you're going to have to advocate for these issues. The Libertarians go, I don't care about anyone in this country. I demand that this government do the things that I want them to do. And then they go, guys, those policies are foreign to many of these people. They don't quite understand what you're saying. I don't care. I don't care what Americans want. That's the Libertarian Party. The American people right now are freaking out about the border. And the Libertarian Party is like, we literally don't care that 28% of people were asked, and they said immigration's a crisis.
Yep.
We don't care. We just want the border to be open, so we will push that and get our 0.8% this time around.
One adjustment to what you just said, which I fully agree with, Democrats will look at the cohorts of people that vote for them and say, how do we make more of them? So childless, multiple degrees in basket weaving, migrants, whatever it may be, cat ladies. Let's incentivize the formation of these groups, make sure those groups continue to grow. Republicans look at our own groups. Oh, we have homeowners, we have small business owners, we have families. Let's do things that don't support them. Let's just support our donors. And then, of course, you have the Libertarians who are just screaming at the wall.
These endless wars that have been built over 80 plus years, you cannot just stop with the snap of a finger.
Right.
Donald Trump sets a timeline for Afghanistan withdrawal, tries to get our troops out of Syria, negotiates the Abraham Accords, tries to make peace with North Korea and Venezuela, imperfectly, and many other places. And the Libertarians are like, I don't care. He inherited wars and he didn't shut them down. And it's like, well, hold on. He was shutting them down. Well, he didn't do it in a week. He was shutting down the wars in the Middle East. Yeah, well, he increased drone strikes. Right, because as you're withdrawing our forces, you need to have cover. So there's more drone strikes. I admit drone strikes are a bad thing. We don't want any of them. But the goal was to get our troops out. When Joe Biden pulls our troops out without any air cover or logistics, the whole thing implodes and becomes a massive disaster. But I swear, I talked to these libertarians and they're like, Trump didn't start any wars, but he was sure engaging in them. And I'm like, yes, because they exist and he has to work to stop them. It is shocking to me that there are libertarians that are so stupid that when you offered a president who literally the first president of my lifetime to be like, I'm ending these wars, they go, no, not good enough. Joe Biden should be president. And I'm like, okay, whatever, dude.
I would respect them if they didn't vote. And there are some of them that are so puritanical that they refuse to vote. But the ones that actually do vote and actually do this party politicking, they're the ones that make no sense, because it falls exactly into your argument. Why are they even bothering if they're not willing to move the needle forward? Why are they willing to spite, what's the expression? Spite your nose, save your face, whatever the expression is.
Cut off your nose to spite your face.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what they're doing on a larger political scale.
I view libertarians as we're all standing here at the bottom of this mountain going, guys, we want to figure out how to get to the top of this mountain. There's a big mountain. How do we get to the top? And the libertarians go, we should be at the top of the mountain. I'll only vote for someone who gets me to the top of a mountain by next week. It's like, okay, well, it's going to take 10 years to climb our way up. A couple of administrations, a lot of hard work, but we can maybe make it 20% of the way. But nope. Unless you promise me then within 1 week, we're at the top of that mountain, I will not vote for you. And then they go around complaining to everybody about how, when we asked Tim to lead us up Everest, he only got us 20% of the way. Why didn't he get us to the summit?
Almost sounded Trumpian there for a second.
Yeah. Some people are just too stupid. They're too stupid. It irks me so much that we're sitting here being like, we literally want to get there, but they built this empire over nearly a century.
Yeah, the
You
left.
can't have one guy come in and just think it'll happen.
The left play the long game. They play generationally. They're not thinking just election
It's the
cycle.
uniparty establishment. Republicans were involved too.
Correct. Agreed. Even better. The uniparty establishment, however you want to describe them, they play at the generational game. They're not playing it just cycle by cycle. They're not demanding things change overnight. They understand this is a game on the margins, moving the needle, and they're going to push it till they're in the place they want to. The libertarians are just acting like spoiled children.
S.A. Federale says, Tim's assessment of corporatist monopolistic forces being the primary factor in Libertarian Party platforms is correct. I've been wrong all along to defend libertarians from comparisons to libertines. Trump was the guy for this all along. The libertarians like to say the only reason for monopolies is because of government collusion. And that's not true. There is a tendency for massive corporate power and government to merge, but it's not because of one or the other. But the idea that we have these big tech companies censoring. Yes, it turned out that the governments effectively merged with them. Why? Because they were monopolistic power centers. Bill Gates was running Microsoft, and the government brought antitrust against him. It was like the 90s over, I think it was like an Internet Explorer on the desktop or whatever. So this idea that monopolies don't form is just, it's a non-argument. It's like made up. It's like they have no real argument as to how you combat monopolies. So they just say, well, monopolies don't exist. And it's like, okay, that's like saying there's no real communism. Well, that wasn't real communism. Sure. Well, that wasn't a real monopoly. The government was involved. The government got involved because it was a monopoly and they wanted to exercise power over their system. Twitter got so big and exerted so much influence that the feds were like, hey, we can inject ourselves into this. Sometimes it is true that monopolies form because governments cut deals with them. But man, look, they talk about private policing. We want to privatize the police force. And they never actually explain how it would be. To be fair, Michael Malice probably had the best argument when he said, well, the mafias negotiate with each other. And they're like private police forces, essentially.
But they become states. That's the thing. That all of this human society originally started as these small little protective units.
Exactly.
Your little clan, your little fiefdom. I'll protect you. You start giving me your grain, start giving me your resources. They eventually develop into states. So I'm trying to figure out how they argue that from the state of nature, you don't develop the states.
Well,
that they're trying to argue that that having no state is natural.
If the argument is let's reverse course and restart with a market system, then build back up into a monopolistic force system, fine, I guess. Figure out a plan for that. But you know what happens if you get private police? Within 20 years, you have a single monopolistic police department. One police station becomes bigger, gets into conflict with a neighboring small town police station and says, guys, we need to set up an agreement so we figure this out. And then they basically just have a treaty in place. And then eventually the bigger one goes to the boss and says, come work for us, we'll buy you out. Look at how the expansion of England. It's exactly as you describe. They're small protectorates. They're not necessarily governmental. They're just forces. And then they take over other villages.
Yeah.
Private is no different. Eventually, you will have one unaccountable authoritarian police system. And the argument is, yes, but people can choose not to pay. And then the market will decide. And then what happens with the mafia? The mafia comes and smashes up your convenience store with baseball bats because you didn't pay. Well, that's not what we're oh, come on, dude. I'm not saying the government is good. I'm not saying what we have is good. I'm saying this idea that you can privatize everything makes no sense.
And these are the anarcho-libertarians, anarcho-capitalists. You have, I think they're called the minarchists, which are just, kind of like what the United States was for most of our history, a very limited government, which at least makes more sense. But then you still get into the issue with you have these corporate entities, you have this concentration of wealth. They start to just buy the government. They start to buy politicians. They start to influence it. So it's like a never-ending story. You, as soon as you start to solve one thing, it becomes a problem in another area.
Yep. All right. Quantum Strange Quark says libertarians might have chosen a radical like Oliver, knowing that a good portion of their base would vote for Trump instead. Secret support to save face? Nah. I mean, the only explanation there would be that Mike Termott intentionally sabotaged Rechtenwald to get the leftist in so that would happen. He would be the only one because he was the guy who was in third place and said, pick Oliver and I'll be his VP. And that undercut Clint Russell, who has actually won the straw poll to be the vice presidential pick. So the whole thing just blew up in the Mises Caucus face.
What do you think will happen to the Mises Caucus going forward?
I don't know. Angela McArdle got reelected as the chair of the LP. So, I mean, that's huge. She has with her, Dave Smith and, Clint as well. But I think I don't know how involved Clint was. But like Angela, setting up the LP National Convention with RFK, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Trump, it's the most relevant the LP has ever been. If Dave Smith ran, they might have got more.
Than Gary Johnson.
Oh, absolutely. Because let's break it down. Dave Smith is tall with a deep voice. We got the hard ones out of the way because modern presidents tend to have to be around that. But he's funny, knows the issues, he's quick-witted, and he's friends with Joe Rogan. He goes on the Joe Rogan podcast, like 3 times in the past couple of months. And so that's big. He's got a massive platform to speak to a bunch of undecided, independent, moderate people. He's relatable. He's not far right. He's not a Trump supporter. He actually would have pulled a ton of people from the left and the right. And he couldn't do it. And he posted on X saying, it's my fault. I let the caucus down or whatever. Rechtenwald, I don't think would have done that well.
Yeah.
I think he would have done better than Joe Jorgensen, but I don't think he would have done that well at all. So it is what it is. That's what the Libertarians get. I don't know what their backup plan was. They should have had one. They didn't. They needed someone. I guess if you can't get Dave, what do you have?
There's no other personality that was running for the Libertarians that had any kind of any chance.
Well, they got to
actually
recruit someone.
Maybe, yeah.
So who could they recruit?
Who was the guy that stripped?
They should just wait for Dave.
That was like 8 years ago or something.
No, didn't he do it again? Wasn't there another strip session?
Oh, no. Alex Stein took his pants off
but he's not a
during a
Libertarian.
comedy
That's fine.
routine.
I guess I was just looking at an old clip. I thought they just do it every convention.
No,
You think it's just a libertarian
I thought it was a
tradition?
tradition, like a cultural tradition,
Polly Puree says, where the hell is Ian? I think he's in Miami. We just launched Ian's Graphene Dream, Polly. You should buy it. Casbrew.com. Graphene. I actually haven't had a chance to try Ian's Graphene Dream. It's Ian's. It was Ian's idea, so it's his coffee. I don't know how they came up with it. He wanted low acidity. I don't know. Is that a good thing?
I don't know.
No idea. Apparently that's a good thing. All right. We Are Change. Luke says, I made fun of Clint today on my show. Yeah. I don't know how Clint could have even run as VP to chase Oliver. It would have been weird.
Very
I don't
weird
know.
ticket.
Yeah. Yep. That one probably wouldn't have worked out.
I have no idea.
That's what I find so fascinating about the Libertarian Party as opposed to sort of the political philosophy. That every time they have a convention, they must have to rehash these fundamental issues. If the Republicans have a convention, there might be some that are like, this is how we think we should handle abortion or immigration. Maybe we're pro amnesty and whatever. And these are, the other ones might be like, no amnesty, deport everybody. I think that's a good move. But ultimately, they can probably reconcile more than some people who are like, we don't want any government, but I want no government and no border, and you want no government and a border. Those are very hard to compromise on.
In some ways, it's a bigger tent than the Republican Party
I
because
think
there's
it
such
is.
a bigger spectrum.
When you look at the political, whatever they call it,
Compass.
graph, right? Libertarians at the bottom, but it ranges from left to right. They do have more to sort of negotiate on.
You know what I think it is? I think the only reason the Libertarian Party actually exists functionally, there's the Green Party, right? But they're not relevant. They've got members. There's a bunch of other parties in this country that you probably never heard of. The Libertarians attract people who are degenerates, who want to be able to do things society normally doesn't allow them to do.
It's a hedonistic party.
You've got people who want to do drugs. Chase Oliver wants to give kids trans drugs. He does. And so so what happens is you get someone who's going, well, why can't I, flip my car upside down in the middle of the road and then dump gasoline all over the place? Who cares? I'm not hurting anybody. And then they say the Libertarian Party is the closest thing I have to a party that will give me what I want. So
the most successful libertarians focused on economics or foreign policy. You look at Ron Paul,
right.
Rand Paul. You even look at some of the thinkers like Milton Friedman or Rothbard or von Mises, et cetera. It was focused on the economic side of the equation. They weren't delving into all this cultural,
the social side.
issues.
The social side is just the Democrats, but without the freebies, right? So if you're a libertarian, if you're a left libertarian, you're essentially the same thing as, and you want the same things as Democrats. Maybe you have a different opinion on guns.
Right. That's basically
about it.
Yeah.
All right. Styx says, was it Anax Colossi? Tim, I personally got a hard to ignore bad omen feeling when he wouldn't confirm that he would seek prosecutions against those traitors. What do you think? I think the issue with me saying people want to see prosecutions is you can't expect Donald Trump to publicly declare war on the heads of massive multinational corporations before he's got any power. Like, if I were to right now announce that I was suing somebody, no lawyer would probably take the case. They'd be like, no way, you just destroyed your chance of winning a lawsuit. Are you nuts? I mean, someone would, they'd be like, yeah, pay me up front and I'll bill you for it and I'll file whatever you want me to file. But if you actually want to win a lawsuit, you prepare everything, keep your mouth shut, then you file, and then let them run their mouths. So Donald Trump's between a rock and a hard place on this one where, of course, the voter base wants to hear him say it, but his lawyers are probably like, don't say anything like that because it'll be turned political. It will negatively impact the pursuit. If Trump gets elected and then an AG does file an indictment against Fauci or bring it to a grand jury, they'll say Trump did it as a political stunt. He's doing it for politicking, just like the Republicans are saying of Democrats. So
I think one of the best things he said in the interview was when he alluded to the fact that he trusted some people. He trusted the wrong people. I mean, he admitted that. He said, I trusted the wrong people in the first term. I've learned a lot since then. I'm not going to do that again. I thought that was one of the bigger takeaways. I agree with you on the prosecution front. You can't just come out there and start leveling all these crazy over-the-top threats and not think there's going to be consequences in the run-up to the election. But I thought that was a massive takeaway from the personnel standpoint.
The Elder Millennial says, Tim, this question came up in my college philosophy class back in 2005. What is the difference between ethics and morals? Keep up the fight. Cheers. I don't know if there is a deeper philosophical answer that I don't know based on the definition. My understanding is that ethics is like the professional boundaries of what is deemed acceptable, and morals is what you think is good and right in life. So there's an overlap, but a general distinction, unless there's something else.
I always heard that morals are often religiously rooted, whereas ethics don't have to be.
Yeah, you have business ethics, things like that. Your accounting practices.
Yeah, ethics is basically just like we do. These are the things that we consider to be the appropriate and professional way to do things. Ethics aren't always necessarily like a violation of ethics could be just improper.
Right.
You know, it's like you spent $50 over the limit. We don't want people doing that, not because it's inherently. So I'll put it this way. If a member of Congress receives a gift of over like $200, it could be an ethics violation. Is it morally wrong? Of course not.
Right.
It's just in this circumstance, we are concerned of untoward influence. Giving someone $200 is not a violation of anyone's morals if it was meaningful. And in fact, the ethics rule actually doesn't even apply if you have a prior relationship to the individual. So if you know somebody for 20 years, you're friends. Actually, if you know someone for a week and you're friends, and then a week later he goes, hey, I'm running for office. You go, huh? And then he runs for office. You can give him gifts all day and night. It's like, this is my friend before he was running for office. That's apparently allowed. So the ethics is just like how we try to have boundaries and professionalism to avoid the perception of or to prevent the oncoming of impropriety. And morals are like, don't do bad things, I guess.
It's a higher standard.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But if you haven't already, smash that like button. 1 like equals 1 Let's Go Brandon or 1 FJB. You can follow the show at Timcast on X and Instagram. You can follow us on Rumble, Timcast IRL. Subscribe to the channel. Share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com. Click Join Us. Become a member at timcast.com. We're going to have that uncensored call-in show coming up in a few minutes. You don't want to miss it. And what am I missing here? Did I get everything? Yeah. Share the show with your friends. Gavin, do you want to shout anything out?
Get a copy of my book, The Emerging Populist Majority, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. And if you're in the New York metropolitan area, join the club, nyyrc.com.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can catch us this summer on the Destroy All Enemies tour with Megadeth and Mudvayne. You can catch our new single Divine on Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and Doozer. And don't forget, the left lane is for crime. Hannah Claire.
I'm Hannah Claire Brummel. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. It was so fun to have you here, Gavin. Follow all of Scanner's work at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at hannahclaire.b. You can follow me on Twitter at hannahclaireb. Thank you guys so much for everything you do. Bye, Serge.
So, Hannah Claire, see you guys.
We will see you all over at timcast.com in about a minute. Thanks for hanging out.